Just a Good Conversation, podcast number 1. Jay Seidel is a husband, a father, a writer, an author, and a teacher. Jay was a combat engineer in the U.S. Army during the first Gulf War, serving 11 years. He holds a BA at Long Beach State, an MA at Cal State Fullerton. He is a professor at Fullerton College, as well as Cal State Fullerton. He's an advisor to the Hornet newspaper and Torch magazine. He launched the first Spanish-language online publication in the California community colleges. While doing all of that, Jay somehow found the time to become a publisher and owner of the La Habra Journal in 2012. Jay created and teaches at Fullerton College a course, the Fullerton Drone Lab. In the last couple of months, Jay has just completed his second edition of his book, Drones, Training and Applications Through Digital Imagery. Information about the Fullerton Drone Program can be found at drones.fullertoncall.edu. And with that, my dear friend, Jay Seidel.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
This is awesome. The first one. And I get you. Yes.
That's it.
All right, Jay. March 4th,
Yes.
1971.
Yep.
You get plopped into the world.
Yep.
Orange County?
La Habra. Well, technically, Whittier is where I was born.
Presbyterian?
Right.
Right. Seems like all of us La Habra kids were born in Whittier
Whittier
Presbyterian. Even though La Habra had a hospital back
Yes.
then. I guess they didn't give birth to kids there.
And there was another hospital. Isn't there like doesn't Whittier have another hospital that's even closer?
Yes.
But everybody
on
went
Colima.
but everybody went to Whittier Presbyterian.
Yeah. Both my cousins were born there as well. Go figure. So, How was it growing up as a kid in Orange County, the rough streets of Orange County?
Yes. Well, as you know, Orange County is not the Orange County. The Orange County that we grew up in is not the Orange County that's kind of on television.
Yeah.
That people have the stigma of the Real Housewives and Laguna Beach and that kind of stuff. So our Orange County was slightly different. A lot of people forget that La Habra is Orange County, and they just assume it's just East LA County.
Right.
And it kind of blends into that. So, I mean, I guess it's just kind of the fact that the city has no freeways and it's got that small town kind of flavor when, growing up. So you're in kind of a Southern California suburb, Mayberry kind of a thing. So
that borders LA. LA County. So our friends could be in Whittier.
Yeah.
LA County. We were both technically born in LA County.
Yeah. And then some people lived in the unincorporated LA County area.
Yeah.
And which is no city owns it, but it's LA County area. And school systems. You were in the school system that straddles both LA County and Orange County.
Yep.
So it was just kind of a unique experience, and just kind of, we're close enough to the beach, close enough to the mountains, but we're neither mountains nor a beach community. So
we're neither.
We're just a suburb of greater Los Angeles area.
Yes. So now you're the kid that went to school. So you went to where elementary school did you go to?
I went to a couple. So, because
you got around as a kid.
Well, no, in the La Habra City School District, they broke up the grades, so you went kindergarten through second grade, and then third grade through fifth grade,
Who the
and then
hell thought of that?
Jumped around. Yeah, so we went to different elementary schools.
3 to 5? That was
and it wasn't a K6 or K8. It was you jumped around. But the thing is, so I went to a grade school. So I never moved. Right. So I never moved, but at my home. But I went to a grade school. I went to kindergarten, and then went to second grade. And at that point, I would have gone to third grade there, but they closed the school because of low enrollment. So then I moved over to third grade, which is just 1 year, to another elementary school. And then fourth, fifth, and sixth, I went to another elementary school because that was where those grades were. And then I went to junior high And when I went to junior high, when I went to 7th grade, that's when they made it a middle school. So they brought the 6th graders over.
Jesus.
So then it became 6, 7, and 8. And so I've never moved by house. And prior to going to high school, I went to 3 different elementary schools.
Right. I went to 1. How is that?
Most people do.
Now,
yeah.
how is that? I was on the other side of La Habra. I'm on the west side.
Right.
I went to Jordan Elementary School.
Right. Which is on the edge of Whittier.
Right.
Yeah.
Right on the edge. Mark went with us now. Pascalski.
Right.
We went through 6. We were kindergarten through 6.
Yep.
And then we went to junior high in Whittier.
Yeah.
Because Rancho Starbuck, I think technically
Whittier
is in Whittier.
Right. Or that unincorporated area. Yeah.
The sheriff's parole it,
Yeah.
So then you go to Washington, right? Is Washington junior high?
Yeah. I was on the side where we had kids that technically lived in Brea.
Yeah.
That went to my grade school, and they lived up in that part of edge of La Habra, edge of Brea.
Right, because I always found this interesting when we first met. Like, there was only a group of like a handful of you that went to La Habra.
Right. So back then, they had restricted. You lived in this district, you go to this high school.
Right.
You lived in this neighborhood, you go to this high school. It wasn't an open enrollment kind of a thing. And so there was Washington, since most of us that were in that region, the majority of the kids that were in that region, right up the street from Sonora High School, and which is like right across I drove past it today. The high school, you go across the street and you're in Brea. So it's so most of the kids were on track to go to that school, but there were 5 of us at Washington Middle School. 5 of us that I remember we took the bus. They take the bus in 8th grade. You're like, get on the bus and we're going to go show you your high school. So we had this full-on bus, and there was only 5 of us on the bus. And then we went to La Habra. And La Habra High School. And so it was me and then 4 other people. One actually ended up not going. So it only ended up being 4 of us that actually went to school. And I mean, I knew them. There's 2 of them that I really knew and continued in high school. Another one I didn't really, our paths differentiated, but they weren't like my people I hung out with on a regular basis, but we kind of knew each other and we grew up together. But we kind of made a little cohort, like we all, we're the La Habra crew, and we went over to La Habra. But then we went to La Habra.
Right.
And that was just a whole new experience because I didn't know anybody.
Yeah, I mean, because that's what I found interesting when I first learned.
Because you guys all knew everybody,
right? Because here you are making that jump into high school. You made that jump into junior high, and it's like, okay, now you got classes every period. Now you're getting jumped into high school, and there's 18-year-old kids at the back end.
Yeah.
You're like this scrawny little 14-year-old. Okay, that's one thing. At least when I went, I had a crew of guys. We were all going.
Right.
Then there's these Washington kids, and there's literally, you could fit in a sedan.
Yeah.
And go on.
Yeah. And plus, you probably knew some of the kids from the grade above you.
Yes.
Because you experienced them at junior high and at Starbucks and Jordan and that kind of stuff. Yeah, you kind of grew up with them a grade ahead of you or 2 grades ahead of you. But I was stranger in a strange land kind of a thing. I just kind of went there and just kind of tried to figure out what I could do. And and what helped with that, actually, the transition was, I remember this in my 8th grade year, that we had, everybody was, I had a lot of friends that played sports and stuff and were active in sports. And I played Little League. Oh, ironically. So I played Little League for about 9 years in La Habra, but La Habra had 2 Little Leagues at the time.
Yes.
They had La Habra Little League and they had East La Habra Little League. Mm-hmm. And I had to fake my address so I could play in East La Habra Little League with all the people I went to school with. Otherwise, I was going to go into La Habra Little League where I didn't know anybody.
And I would have met you then.
Oh, you were? Yeah. I didn't go there. So I went in East La Habra, and It was dumb. Well, because East La Habra wasn't the sanctioned one.
Right, yeah.
So,
it was
so we had
gyms, plumbers, kids and stuff. It was like
we couldn't use MLB team names.
Right, yeah.
So I was on the Stars, I was on the Broncos. It's just random stuff, but it was cool. You know, we didn't know any better at the time.
Golden Star Galleons,
Yeah,
whatever company would sponsor you.
Right. It was. They just came up with random team names, but
Because I was on the Red Sox and I was on the
and you had the legit
Yes.
MLB stuff. We didn't have like our Broncos. We were blue and yellow. And
I'm surprised you weren't Denver Bronco
you
colors.
would think, but I guess they didn't want a copyright infringement or something at the time. But
Yeah, because that was big in '78. Just coming down on you.
I know. So, but what helped me with the transition was, you know, we would talk about it in 8th grade, and we were talking, and you know, what are you going to do? Yeah, I'm going to play football, and I wasn't really into football, like because I didn't play, so I was like, I'm not going to jump into football. But this fall sport, I grew up in the water. I grew up with a pool and swam all the time. And so I was like, oh, I could do, you know, what's this water polo? So
What's this one?
yeah, so I'm like, this is kind of cool. And a buddy of mine was going to Sonora, and it was like all about water polo. And I was like, oh yeah, well I'll show you. I'll be La Habra water polo. So,
Now, had you ever seen water polo?
no, I think I might have seen maybe something, but
In
I
the
didn't
Olympics, something?
really.
'Cause
Maybe a picture,
did you have any idea going in what you other than there was a pool?
and you swam around.
But you swim weird too.
Yeah, you swim weird, and you don't really swim because you stand there. But it's like soccer. But yeah, no, I didn't really know too much about it, but I knew enough about it, and I knew like, hey, I'm a strong swimmer. I could do that. So I signed up for it, and we started practice, you know, in the summer because it was a fall sport. So I started, which was a great thing that helped me because then I got to know people before I transferred in, you know, before I actually started my freshman year. I also took summer school between 8th grade and freshman year at La Habra. So I got to know my summer school, a bunch of 8th graders that were coming in and taking pre-algebra.
Right,
And,
so you knew somebody.
Yeah, so that's where I met Mark and stuff. So so I got to know some people. So it just kind of helped with the transition rather than just going in cold.
Right.
And
that first day and you know nobody.
I don't know anything.
Yeah.
And then the idea, once you do one sport, then you just keep doing more sports.
Right.
Because then you don't have to take a PE class.
Right.
So,
hey, buddy, you want to come do this?
then I'll do that. Yeah. So so that helped with the transition throughout La Habra.
Okay. Well, then there you go. That's a hell of a transition into high school, just being thrown into the fire.
Yeah.
So I tried to do some, during the research,
Yeah.
I was trying to find the exact date in which I think you and I met.
It was a football game.
It was a football game.
It was a Friday night.
It was a Friday night, and it was a playoff varsity game.
Okay. Yeah.
So
Sophomore year.
So that was my thing. I couldn't remember if it was our freshman or sophomore year.
It was sophomore year.
Okay.
Freshman year, I kind of just wandered around.
Okay,
And,
so
yeah.
how do you think, did you used to go to football games?
Periodically, because it was the thing to do, Friday Night Lights
Right.
kind of a thing. Just out of school spirit, you know, and here's the thing. I don't think I went my freshman year to games, to varsity games. I may have. I don't really remember. But then I was like, my head was in the pool, and it was all about water polo too. But what happened is being part of water polo, then you're part of athletics, and then you support the fellow teams and those kind of things. So through the water polo guys, I started kind of paying attention to football, and then I started going to the football games, at least sophomore year at least.
Right.
And then, yeah, that's playoff is when we met.
Yes, because we met in the most odd,
Random thing.
All I remember is a lot of confetti, and somehow I ended up on your shoulders storming the field.
Yep.
I don't even know if we were introduced. It was
No,
it was more like I'm going to climb on your back like a racehorse, and I'm going to pound on your head, and we're going to run onto the field. Like, I don't even know. I was like, hello, my name's Matt. Do you mind if I jump on your back?
I think we exactly. Going to buy me dinner first?
Yeah. I mean, there was none of that. It was straight, some kind of sleeper hole in my. Just get on, go, monkey, go.
Well, I think our groups kind of meshed up with athletics, and I think that's when, sophomore football players, and we kind of got connected. I knew Jason Klieger from the Washington transfer, and so I think that's how the pockets kind of moved. And I think, this was early in the fall.
Right. As I looked, it's November. It's like, it's right before Thanksgiving.
Right. And this is my, second year of water polo. I already gone through the whole thing. I was on the swim team in freshman year. So I'm feeling comfortable. Freshman year I was all awkward. Sophomore year I'm feeling comfortable. And now I know these guys. Now I got friends. That's where my neighbors at this point, Mark McGraw, those kind of, that I kind of grew up with. He went to private elementary, not Washington. So, like I said, I think our groups crossed over, and I think we just went in one group. But then, then I just remember just putting him on the shoulder, and going, "Hey, big guy, put me on the shoulders," and then carrying you down on the field.
Yeah,
but nice to meet you.
Yeah, it's odd, but that's how a friendship started.
Yeah,
and like you can't write that kind of stuff.
No, like I said, I can't. I can't remember our actual first interactions aside from you being on my shoulders.
Right. And people pay good money to have that happen to them. But somehow, like I remember my wife, then girlfriend, asking me, like, "So how did you and Jay meet?" I'm like, "There was confetti, and."
A lot of yelling and screaming.
And storming the field. Like
and cheering.
Like 15-year-old boys would. Like, that's it. She's like, wait. I'm like, there was no handshake or good to know you.
No.
And then it became basically Ferris Bueller for the next 3 years. Like, we were inseparable.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
What would have happened had we not gone to that game?
I know. If one of us were sick or something. Right. Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, I was telling Ant that. It's like, Jay might not have met his wife. Like, if you think of the domino effect, ripple.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
Because then it would be very weird how one moment, like, I'm going to get on your back, and it's a lifetime friendship.
Right. Had you got on Jamie Hutcherson's back or something, and it would have never have happened. It's just a weird thing. You just had to get on some guy's back at that moment.
Yeah. So. I just saw that beautiful head of hair. It said, I need to hold
my high top fade.
Yeah. I need to hold on to that while he runs onto the field.
I got to see if I can sit on that flat top.
And the funny thing is, like, I don't remember anything after that. Like, there wasn't a, hey, thanks, that was fun.
No. It was just like, hey, let's go out again.
It was something like, okay, I'll see you on Monday.
Yeah, that's kind of, I think so. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And then somehow I allowed you to stuff me in the trunk of your car for the rest
multiple
of that
times when we go to lunch.
Sophomore year. Yeah. That was it.
That was to pack my car full of kids and go to McDonald's or go to 7-Eleven or go out to lunch, and everybody would sit in the car because I had a car, and
that's
you were the smallest, so you got on the hatchback.
Right, and that was honestly the Ferris Bueller kind of comparison. Like, I didn't have a car and you did.
Yeah.
So you were Cameron with a car.
Right.
And even though
he's gonna keep calling me.
Even though you had an orange car.
Orange Chevy Vega hatchback. Yep.
It was better than my bike.
1976 orange Chevy Vega.
Yeah.
So it was easy for my mom to hear about all my exploits and where I went because the car was so identifiable. People were like, hey, Jan, I saw I think that was Jay driving. And he had a car full of kids.
Yeah, Jan, there's only one orange car in La Habra.
Yeah, one hatchback. And I think there was some guy in the trunk. Yeah.
It's a shame they stopped making that car. It was such a damn good car.
Yeah, well, you would think. But I think I was watching a History Channel thing and they were talking about the Pinto and then the Vega. And the Vega was Chevy's Pinto, and they were talking.
Oh no, it was way better.
Yeah, well, it was a lot better, and they were talking about like, yeah, they were cheap and they didn't hold up an accident. So I'm like, oh my god, now as a parent, as an older guy, I'm like, oh my god, I put all their lives at risk. But at the time, I was like, yeah, get in.
Well,
put something on top.
I was in that car during an accident when that woman hit us.
Yes, you were.
Yeah, I mean, and
it's durable.
It's durable. It is. So our friendship continues through high school.
Yep.
Okay, so and to transition this, I remember this because every year at Christmas, when we break out the Santa and the pit bulls and put it on the roof.
Yeah.
So I'm in the garage. It's December of '89. We've graduated.
Yep. I know where this is going.
I'm in the garage with Jamie Hutcherson. We're making these things. We've stenciled out what's supposed to look like Santa and reindeer, but somehow they got squashed and looked like pit bulls. And pit bulls were all the rage back then.
Steroided out,
ghetto
reindeer.
Pit bulls, right?
Yeah.
And you walk up and say,
guess what, guys?
I'm joining the Army.
Yeah.
Oh, this is a kid who spent all his time in the water, and you decided you wanted to wear boots and go.
So the funny
because that
surprised a lot of people.
Well, it surprised a lot of people, and I think that was my best acting ever. That I was like, oh, okay, as it was breaking my heart inside, like, what?
Where are you going?
Why are you going to do that to us?
Why are you picking up the band?
Yeah, come on, Cameron, you can't just take your car and leave. And you didn't even have the Vega at that time. I think that was the Scirocco.
No, I think at that time I had the truck.
Did you move the Scirocco to the truck?
Yeah, I had the SN truck because that was after the first semester of college.
Right.
Yeah.
You and of all the people I've ever known, no one's had as many cars as you've ever had.
Yeah,
I've never driven.
I've been counting. Yeah.
I've never driven in as many cars as you've owned.
I still count. Yeah, I had a lot of cars. And it's not like Jay Leno kind of cars. I just trash one, so I got to go now. Well, the Vega. So I remember the Vega, my first car, was totaled because a motorcycle rear-ended me, and the cost of repairing the vehicle was more. I could drive it, everything was fine, but the repairs cost more than the car was worth. So insurance just said, no, it's totaled out. But I'm like, I'm still driving it. Everything's fine. You just put a bumper on it. And so yeah, that's what segued to the Scirocco. But yeah, so the Army. Funny story about that is, you probably didn't really know this because I didn't really delve too deeply in high school. I didn't fixate on it like I did in elementary. But from third grade to probably about sophomore, junior year, probably junior year is when I kind of tried, is I wanted to be a pilot. And I was so fixated on flying.
I remember you talking about that. But when we're in high school, everybody's talking about something.
Yeah, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. So, but I was really from third grade on. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to go to the Air Force Academy, and I wanted to be a pilot in the military, and then I wanted to be a commercial pilot, and that's what I wanted to do. And so that's why I was, in classes where I was like trying to go to honors classes and trying to do all that academic stuff so I could get to the academy.
Right.
And so, and I was in sports and I was trying to do all this stuff, but I applied. And at the time, like most academies still, you have to get congressional nomination.
Right.
But they were limited to how many people they could do it. Now it's a little bit more broad.
Yes.
You can have more. It's a little bit more open. But at the time, it was limited to like 2 per state or something like that, some ridiculous number. So I applied. And again, from third grade on, like there was no plan B. Like this was what I was going to do.
Because in third grade, why would there be any plan B?
Right, exactly. And this is really cool.
I'm Jay Seidel. You're going to take me.
Right. And this is what's going to happen because I'm just going to do that, and that's what I want to do. So therefore, it's going to do it, And that's because, America, land of opportunity. I'm going to do this. Is what I'm going to do. And, yeah. And then I didn't get accepted. And so,
bastards.
Which was devastating, but not. and what the crappy thing was because the rejection was because I did not necessarily. I think it was because I didn't show enough leadership potential. So, meaning that yes, I was in honors classes. Yes, I was I played sports every season, but I wasn't in ASB, student government, and I wasn't in a club. I wasn't president of like the Spanish club or something like that.
Right.
So I'm like, and I wasn't doing community service hours. So these other frickin' people were doing all that, and I was like, okay, fine. I you're a jerk, but I'm not gonna complain about it. But I don't have a plan B, right? So now I'm kind of like, oh well, crap. I don't know what I want to do. So I just kind of finished up senior year, and then I went to, because I had the grades and stuff, I went to Cal State Fullerton, and I had money. I got scholarships and stuff, and I went to Cal State Fullerton. But because I was able to do so well in high school, I thought, school was pretty fine. In college, the fact that they didn't have bells and that they didn't actually take roll really, really appealed to me. So, watching Days of Our Lives and stuff.
Right.
Planning your schedule around it so you can watch Days of Our Lives.
Well, every Monday we went to the movies.
Right. Yeah. Just bail out and go.
I have never seen more movies with one single person in my life. I mean, we would go to the movies all the time.
It was open. Yeah.
Right.
We had that schedule, and I was like, I'm not going to go to class.
I remember I was devastated when you took a Monday class.
Yeah, because it messed up our schedule.
Yeah, we couldn't watch Monday Night Football and then go to the movies.
Yeah.
You had some class that didn't
Monday
end till,
night. It was an English
who the
class.
hell takes a Monday night class?
Yeah, I couldn't watch Monday Night Football. I know that was so weird, but yeah, I blew school. I got an academic probation.
Right.
I got Fs and stuff. So then I lost the money for school. I didn't have a plan B. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I lost money for college. I now was on academic probation. So now I'm like, crap.
And
I have
then
to.
that meant something.
Yeah. Now they rehabilitate you, and they're like, oh, we'll help you. And at that time, they're like, oh, sucks to be you. Good luck next semester.
You got 24 hours.
Right. Let's see if you can pick it up next time. And so I tell students that all the time now. It's like, man, if you can rehabilitate. Back then, they just said, sucks.
No, they kicked you off the
you just deal
campus
with it.
and,
there is no prize for it.
We don't need you.
Yeah, exactly. If you can't make it, you can't make it. Whatever, sink or swim. But I and in high school, I went to all the recruiters and stuff, and because I was already like, oh yeah, Air Force. But once I got the rejection letter, I was like, screw Air Force. And
You and your wings.
Right. I was in the Civil Air Patrol too, and
Of course you were.
Yeah, and I was in Boy Scouts.
You were. Yep.
For most of my life, and then I transferred from Boy Scouts. I went to Civil Air Patrol. Again, another thing, like if I do this, then the academy is going to accept me. But yeah, so I didn't do that. And I remember this. I was in Target parking lot, Christmas shopping, and I was walking out, and I had my La Habra Wrestling sweatshirt on. And I was walking out or whatever, walking across the parking lot, and I hear this, hey man, how'd the team do this year? I'm like, oh. And I look over and it's a recruiter. I'm like, oh, here we go. I'm like, oh, okay.
Here we go.
Yeah. Well, because I know what
dance,
it is. Right.
You know the dance.
This is the deal. Yeah. Okay. What are you going to try to sell me on? So I go over and, I'm like, well, I don't play anymore. I graduated, but I played wrestled all in high school and stuff. And then he starts talking, and that was just his entry point,
Sure.
So we start talking, and I tell him, I was pretty honest with the recruiters that I talked to. I'm like, I like the military. I was all into it, blah, blah, blah. And then I didn't get in, and, here it is. And I remember distinctly, I remember the question, because he asked me, he said, so what? He's like, well, you sound like you're into it, but what's keeping you from joining the military? I'm like, you know what? Because of our relationship somewhat, I had a new perspective on things. And I was like, I don't think I want to do 4 years. And he's like, well, because it was an Army recruiter.
Right.
And he's like, well, if you qualify, the Army offers 2-year enlistments. I'm like, and I was like, 2-year enlistments and money for college? He's like, yes. I'm like, huh, all right. That, I think I could do 2 years. and get money for school. That's like a junior college stint. I could do that. And that's kind of my mindset at the time. I'm like, okay.
They give you a gun and boots, just like junior college.
Yeah. And I'm like, what do you have to do to qualify? He's like, well, if you test and you have the qualification. I'm like, I got that. So he's like, yeah, come by my office. So I went to the office, which is not far from my house where it used to be. So I went in and talked to him and figured, I think I'm going to do this. What I told you guys is kind of how I told my mom too, and kind of like, guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to join the Army. And my mom's like, what about the Air Force? I'm like, no, screw the Air Force. And because I was angry. Right. And so I'm like, I'm going to do the Army.
I'll show them.
They can do 2 years. Yeah. And so because I just figured 2 years and money for school, because I had no plan. I didn't know what I wanted to do.
Sure.
So I thought, I'll go there and be all I can be, and do that.
And you had, of course, no idea this guy in the Middle East was going to attack this very small country called Kuwait.
Right. Yes.
And August of 1990.
Yes.
So you're barely in.
Right. Yeah, because my first day of basic training was my 19th birthday. And day one of basic training was my 19th birthday. And by the way, so I signed up. This is another real quick funny story. So when I signed up, I was like, I got focused. I'm looking at all the jobs and stuff. I'm like, there's a military police. I'm like, I can be a cop.
Okay, yeah, and I remember that discussion.
Yeah, that was my plan.
You had 3 choices, right, or something like that.
They had plate choices of where you can go, and where you want to be stationed, which I got none of those.
Right, you wanted Hawaii.
Hawaii, yeah.
Nobody picks that.
Yeah,
sure,
exactly.
Right, yeah.
Exactly.
That's totally open.
Yeah. Tell us what you want.
Everybody wants to go to Arkansas.
Exactly. So, but I remember I was like, I'm going to be an MP. I'm going to be a military police. I got 95 Bravo. I got the thing. So when I went to the place where you do your physical and you pick your job, it's MEPS. And I went there. It's down in right by LAX. And the guy comes in and says, okay, what job do you want? What do you want anybody to be? And I'm like, 95 Bravo. I want to be a military police. And he looks and he's like, you can't do it with your 2-year enlistment. I'm like, oh, well, crap. You're not talking. That's the deal breaker right there. I said, well, you're not talking me out of the 2-year enlistment. So what else do I qualify for? So he pulls out the list of things that they printed out, what I qualify for. And he starts going down the list. He says, air traffic controller. And I say, I like aviation. That sounds good. I think they have good jobs. Reagan just had the thing with the air traffic controllers. I'm like, you know what? I'll pick that. And I distinctly remember this. He basically talked me out of it. Like, he kind of like, a lot of paperwork on my end, but you don't want to do it. I'm like, okay, fine.
He's talking you out of jobs.
What else is on the list? And he went down, and then he said, combat engineer. I'm like, oh, yeah, that was a cool video that I saw at the recruiter's office. I think that's kind of, no research on what it is. I'm like, and engineers make a lot of money on the outside world. So, yeah, I'll do that. Combat engineer. He's like, okay. And then sign me up.
You got one.
So exactly, because it's just a version of infantry. So infantry with explosives, basically. So I was like, yeah, I'll do that, and so they signed me up, and yeah. So then I go to my basic training at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, and then I come back, and then my station because I didn't have a long enlistment. Active duty enlistment, so they put me stateside, and they sent me to Fort Bragg, North Carolina, and home of the airborne. And that's where they said, when a buddy of mine from basic and I went there, we were the two that from our basic class. I went there, and we were both going to 2 different units. We would go to a reception station, and they said, here's the thing. And they said, combat engineer. I said, yeah, we're combat engineers. They said, there's 2 kinds of combat engineers that come to Fort Bragg. And we're like, oh, really? What are the 2? And they said, those that go airborne and those that go somewhere else. And it's like, oh, man. And I said, well, where's somewhere else? They said, Korea. I'm like, I'm not going to Korea. so they sent us to the airborne units and stuff. And then after I got to my unit, I was just at my unit couple months. And because I was with an airborne unit at Fort Bragg, we were on the alert. We were the first to mobilize. Then by October of 90, we were in Dhahran, Saudi Arabia. So, good times.
Good times. Yeah. You couldn't have picked a better time.
Yeah.
Hello.
I think I told you this, and I told my mom this. When I signed up for the Army, I was like, okay, the wall's coming down.
Yeah, no.
Panama had just happened. We're all good.
Panama was a weekend skirmish, too.
There's no war. I just go into... do 2 years and I'll be out.
Russians are our buddies. Right. Everybody loves us.
There's no more East Germany or anything like that. So we're all good. We're all good.
We got a new president. Right. He's former CIA ambassador to China, VP. We're all good.
Yeah. And then, who knew about the Middle East? So who was paying attention? So,
whoopsies.
Yeah. So, then I went to Saudi Arabia and sat there for Desert Shield.
Right. So I just remember going, holy Christ. Well,
bye.
I lost him, and now I'm going to lose him.
Right. You idiot.
Yeah, I'm just thinking. And, of course, there was no Gulf War movies yet for anything. It was like Three Kings or Jar. So,
not even that.
Right, nothing. So the only things that were coming out
was Vietnam and then Born on the 4th of July.
Right. So I'm thinking, it's going to be, Stanley Kubrick's, version of Jay in the Middle East with some guy screaming at him at basic training.
Heartbreak Ridge.
Yeah, and then you're going to be singing Disney songs going through, Saudi Arabia.
Yep. Yeah, kind of. We sang the Eagles, but, so we went, to Saudi Arabia, and I was over there compared, here's the thing, that was the first after Vietnam, real
It was a war.
And so we didn't know what to expect. We had all these visions of Vietnam, but then we went in there and it happened very quickly, and we came back. But, I run into the veterans now, especially students and stuff that come in, and they did 2 tours in Afghanistan, or they did a tour in Iraq and then 2 tours in Afghanistan, and it's like, man, I had nothing compared to what you guys did.
Right.
So I don't even try to enter that. I was in the military, but I don't talk about combat stories with them because that's a whole different kind of combat.
Right.
That's more. They were in more World War II, Vietnam level stuff. Ours was pretty quick, but it was still intense. We got into some skirmishes and situations where we were in combat, but we went from Saudi Arabia straight into Iraq, and ended up in Basra. And we had the largest demolition. My unit had the largest demolition mission since World War II, to blow up a Iraqi munitions bunker, and that was stupid and fun. Well, it's stupid because, the ironic thing. So we go in there, and there's all these subterranean mounds, right, where all these ammunitions are, and we have to go in and we have to put our explosives down, and we're putting if I put this block of C4 by this motor round, it'll blow up and it'll shoot this motor round. No, it's all gonna blow up. Right. But the funny thing was, we went in there and we were like, wait a minute, we can read all these boxes. It was kind of like Iron Man, when you go in there and all of a sudden Tony Stark realizes, we're selling all these weapons to these bad guys. We went in there and it's all U.S. plot equipment. So basically, we were just repossessing it. We were just saying, okay, Saddam Hussein, we're just going to blow this stuff. I know we sold this to you, but we're just going to
repo it back.
We're going to take this back.
He was our buddy when he was fighting the Iranians.
Exactly. But now we're going to recall this chunk.
Right.
And so we blew that up. And actually, that was my 20th birthday. I remember sitting there looking at birthday cards that I got in the mail. And while we were blowing stuff up in southern Iraq. And my 21st birthday, I was at North Carolina. I was in the field in the rain. So yeah, memorable moments of birthdays in the Army. Yeah.
So the boys and I, the two youngest, were watching Private Ryan. So they had known you were in the Army, but I was trying to explain to them what. When you say, combat engineer, they're thinking like, well, what does that mean?
Yeah.
So there's the opening scene. There's a combat engineer, and Tom Hanks's character is like hiding behind this thing, and the combat engineer, who's a lower rank, is telling him, "Sir, you need to leave. I am blowing this up." And I said to them, "That's Jay.
Yeah,
that's Jay." Like at that moment, he's in charge of the situation because he's got to blow this crap up and move it through because there's tanks coming behind him.
Yeah,
and they were like, "Oh, that's badass."
Yeah, we had. It was cool. It was a cool video, but. Like I said, that's what signed me up.
Somehow they think you're in Normandy taking D-Day. So my kids really now have put you up a couple of notches.
Yeah, we had my street cred's up.
Yeah,
but we had a situation. I mean, a lot of situations in Iraq when we were out there, the units. Because we were in the desert, and we were in trucks with wheels, and we couldn't slug through the desert, and we were attached to help out armor units, and the armor units would like, okay, bye, and so they would go and they would run into situations where it would be minefields or the bombs from the F-15s that dropped, the scatter bombs, cluster bombs that came down and they didn't blow up, so they would run into things like, oh, we're not driving our tanks through that, so then we would come in and we would clear out all the exploded ordnance and the cities that, so they could clear through. So we had to blow stuff up all the time over there, which was cool.
Right.
For, a 19, 20-year-old kid to blow stuff up and learn how to do that. But, so that was, we did. We just kind of said, get out of the way. We got to blow, we got to set this up, and we got to blow this charge up there, and we got to set the C4 out there, and we got to find out. And so I was around a lot of explosives stuff as a 19-year-old.
And so us communicating during that time, when you get back and your time is up, I remember you telling me like, I think I'm going to get into journalism, or I'm doing journalism. Like, I never understood, how did you go from blowing things up in the middle of the desert to like, I'm going to write
stories
take
and stuff.
Pictures.
So when I got back,
and so when you come back, the war's done.
Yeah, when I come back,
the weekend skirmish or whatever they wanted.
And I got out of active duty in '92.
Right.
And I did a lot while I was in the Army, and they kept trying to extend me, but I was like, no.
Of course.
And I was like, no, I'm gonna. I actually
you want another two? I mean, you want another two?
Yeah, I did a half-ass attempt because they have something in there called the FAST test, Flight Aptitude Skills Test, and so I signed up to take this test, and basically, if I would have passed it, I would have gone to flight school. I would have been a helicopter pilot. I was going to go to flight school, and I would have went to Fort Rucker, Alabama, and gone through flight training, and then gone to fly helicopters. So, because again, going back to my aviation mindset, I'm like, you know what? I'm getting towards the end of my term. I really want to go back and go to college, and go back home and see my friends and my family and stuff. And so I come back, but if I don't take this test, then I'll always have that regret.
Sure.
So I signed up to take the test. I was trying to do some correspondence courses and stuff too. So I signed up to take the test, but I said half-assed because I didn't really study. I got the book, but I was like, I flipped through it, kind of read it a little bit, but I really didn't dive too deeply into it because at that point, I was just going to let fate decide.
Right. Your heart wasn't really into it, maybe?
Because my heart was more inclined to going home because I'm like, man, if I do that, that's 4 more years, and then who knows where I'll go.
Yeah, I think at that point you really have to be committed. Like, I'm going to do this time.
Right. And like I said, I kind of left it open to like, if I pass, then that's the sign for me to go. But if I don't, I'm going home. And I remember I took the test, and I was the only non-aviation person taking the test because the other guys were like crew chief, there was a mechanic. So these guys all have been around helicopters 3-4 years and studied them.
And you're showing up with a demo patch.
Here I am. I'm like, okay. So needless to say, I didn't pass it, but I wasn't heartbroken. So I was like, okay, whatever. Guess I'm going home. And so I came back. Sorry about that. I came back. And I moved into the National Guard because I was like, 1 week in a month, 2 weeks out of the year, I could do that. And I get money.
Now, was that part of the 2 years you got to do 4 or?
So when you sign up, you technically got to do 8. I think you still have to do 8.
Okay.
So you do active duty. A lot of people normally sign up for 4 years. So you sign up for 4 years, and then you have another 4 years that's called inactive ready reserve. So they could call you up. We ran into Ready Reserve guys that were called up to go to Desert Storm, and they were like, "Dude, I was sitting on my couch, and now they call me up, and I'm driving a truck." And so I thought, well, if I'm going to be on the Ready Reserve list, I might as well be getting paid for it and stay in it. And I could do this 1 week in a month, 2 weeks out of the year.
Sure.
So I did. I went into the National Guard, and that's when I came back to school, and my parents had moved to Oregon. Hey, your stuff's in storage. You can come up with us or stay in Southern California. I'm staying in Southern California. That's when I moved in with you.
Yeah.
And yeah, so at that point, maybe you don't know this. I don't know, but I share this with my students a lot. And you were getting into photography, and I'm like, I like photography, and I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was going to school. I was changing my major every week, because I was like, I should do this. I want to do this. Should I be a lawyer? Because I got to be successful. But you said something that it's funny. At the time, it felt like it was so profound. Maybe it's just at that time I needed to hear it. But now I look back and it's like a no-brainer, like duh. Because you told me, because I was asking, we were talking about life and careers and what we want to do, right. And you said, because you wanted to get in photography, and you said, I really don't care what I do, I just don't want to dread going to work. And I was like, wow, that's so deep. Again, you look back now, right. It's like no-brainer. That's common sense.
Why didn't my counselor in high school tell you that, right? Like
you would think, yeah. Geez. But I didn't hear it from those guys, but I heard it from you, and I was like, oh yeah. Well, what do I like? I like sports, but I'm not going to play. I'm not going to coach. I don't want to sell tickets. I don't want to do lawn maintenance and field maintenance for it, and facilities management. So
I'm not going to chalk lines.
Yeah, exactly. I don't see myself. I think of that major league. Who are these guys? So what? Oh, this is communications, media relations. What is that? And I started looking into it. And funny, I don't know if you know this. So I was exploring, and I did an informational interview just to do some research. Mm-hmm. And the informational interview, you go out and try to find out, because it's a reverse interview. You try to find out, what do you do this job? I said it was for school, and but I interviewed a media relations director at the time named Tim Mead, and who is with the Angels, and great person, great human being, and he was just telling me all this information about, I need to do this, and this is what it's like, and you get to do this. I'm like, that's what I want to do. Oh, and there's a connection with photography. So I was like, I can hang out with Matt, and I can kind of do what he's doing, but then I can do this other stuff, and this is really cool. Oh, and then the school has a PR class. I'm going to take that PR class, and then from there, I was already taking pictures with you.
Right.
I was getting into public relations and creating companies like Action Sports Photography.
Yes.
And to help you out. And so that was a whole experience. And but then through that, students in the class were part of the newspaper, and then I learned about journalism, and I'm like, oh yeah, I could do that. So I got like the clouds parted, the sun shined down. I'm like, I want to get into communications. I want to get in the field of communications and media, and this is what I want to do. And I liked it. So that's what kind of brought me there. Oh, and then I found out that there is, in the National Guard, there was a position of photojournalist job,
right? Yeah,
at Los Alamitos, like in the National Guard, and it was stationed at Los Alamitos. So I'm like, and there was a position open because I was working security, and I was working with a guy who is in public affairs, and at Los Alamitos, and he told me about it, and I was like, I could do that, and so
literally, it's in Orange County.
Yeah, and I filed the paperwork and reclassified, and then they sent me to training as a photojournalist in the military. And so 1 weekend a month and 2 weeks out of the year, I was getting military trained and getting paid to train as a photojournalist while I was going to school to study communications and journalism and that kind of stuff. So it's just, I'm like, this is a great win-win.
Right. So I always thought, because that's when you got into it. That's you could see the switch in the career. Okay, I am now doing this. It wasn't.
I'm in.
Right. It wasn't. I'm 8 years old and I want to fly helicopters.
Right.
Right. And that's my passion at 8. And somehow I'm going to translate it to an adulthood, which we all wanted to be astronauts or firemen You switched it then. Had somehow that had happened for you in high school, or the first couple months in the military, would you have stayed in the Army longer in some kind of photojournalism capacity? Because I have met guys who were, I did a workshop in Maine media, and there was a captain in the Air Force, and she had been in for like 15 years. Mm-hmm. And she's like, I'm not leaving. She's like, I work at the best newspaper and magazine. It's the Air Force and so forth. So had that have been presented to you in that way, could that have been something? Because this generals have their own personal. It's like it's a machine at that level.
Right. When I at 18, 19, 20, no, I just wasn't there.
Right.
And I wasn't there. I was still thinking, well, I learned explosives. Maybe I could still be a cop and be on the bomb squad. That was my out. That was I thought it'd be LAPD bomb squad. But then I was around explosives too much, and I was like, you know what? I like my fingers.
To count to 10.
I don't want to have to stress. So, yes, there's adrenaline rush, but there's a limit to how much adrenaline you want. But I thought, once I discovered it, then I realized, like, this is a thing. I kick myself. After the fact, I kick myself all the time. Like, I could have totally done this in the military. I wouldn't have done Army. I would have gone Air Force or Navy, probably. I wouldn't have gone Marines.
And you say that, those are the two most beautiful ones visually.
Yeah. Oh, because combat camera, oh my gosh, those guys. Yeah.
I once was a judge for a photo contest, and the guys in the Navy, their stuff was just magnificent. The time on a carrier, in a sub.
Oh, yeah.
And the stuff that the Air Force people shot.
Yeah.
And I was just like, oh my God, you're getting paid to hang out of, name the plane and shoot other planes for them. And one of the people did a the Halo high altitude jump and shot it.
Yeah.
And I was like, I would have killed to have mounted a camera on my head at 30,000 feet and jump.
Right. Yeah. Because they don't show this video in the recruiting station. They show the infantry, combat engineer, armor. Here you drive a tank. How cool is that? For an 18-year-old kid. Oh, that's cool.
Right.
That's like a monster truck.
But see, they only suckered you for 2 years.
Right.
Had they showed you something else, my thought was,
no, because at 18, 19, I wouldn't, because the only thing that got me in was the 2 years.
Right.
Because I went and talked to the other recruiters, and everybody had said 4 years. Actually, to be honest, looking back, hindsight now, I didn't talk to them, and usually, like, they're considered the military stepchild, but I would have probably gone Coast Guard.
Yeah, no.
Because they have a great public affairs, photojournalism, media kind of area, and plus you're
Rhode Island.
Yeah, exactly. You're doing stuff, on the coast.
Right. You're you're going to be always on the coast. Beautiful
scenery.
You're not in Iowa.
Right.
Nothing wrong with Iowa, but you're not going to be
a Southern California kid.
Right.
Oh, Coast Guard would have been the way to go.
Oh, sorry, you're going to have to spend 2 years in Rhode Island, and then we're going to move you to, name the other spot.
Yeah, sorry, you're going to be on the Gulf Coast.
Right.
And, we're going to move you up to the...
Special training in Maine.
Yeah, and the Oregon coast up in Astoria.
Right.
You have to stay up... Oh, okay. Again, looking back now from a mature adult standpoint, I was like, damn it, I should have paid more attention. But as a 19-year-old, you have teenage brain kind of a thing, and I wasn't really thinking along those lines. But yeah, no, I do kick myself for maybe not seeing that, not being more aware. The thing about I did training, the photojournalism training you do. It's a joint operation training, so you do training with public affairs people from the Marines and from the Air Force and from the Navy, talk to each other and go through the training, and they're trained at the Defense Information School, and they teach you that stuff. But what they do, and you learn about the different branches, and the Army public affairs and photojournalism is like I guess we need it. You can do that. Here it is. But even our officers, there's no branch where they can come in and learn it. You're an infantry officer that now you're going to be tasked to do some administrative and run the public affairs unit. So, and then you go back and command your battalion. Oh my gosh. But the Navy and the Air Force have, you go into combat camera and you go into these things and you get trained, and that's your job. Like, you're in there, and so that's why I was like, man, if I had something that were with the branches that committed to it, maybe that would have been cool.
Right.
Maybe I would have been more into it. I actually, you don't know this. I don't think you know this, but I was
tell me.
I was considering, because the other thing, ultimately, I ended up almost 12 years in the military, and at 20 you retire. You get the retirement,
right.
That kind of stuff.
Yep.
So I'm like, this was probably maybe about 8 years ago or so. I was really contemplating going back, like National Guard Reserve.
No, I remember you talking about this, yeah.
Yeah.
Because you would become an officer?
Yeah, I was going to be an officer.
Right.
Yeah. I didn't know if I told you or not.
Yeah. I think you advised me on that at that point.
Yeah. And I was going to go Navy. And I was talking to the Navy because I was like, I'm not going to, because if you go officer in the Army, they're going to put you like, I'm going to be an engineer officer.
Right.
Screw that. Because I knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to do public affairs. And so, and I thought, well, Navy doesn't have National Guard. Navy has Reserve, and that's San Diego. I'm like, I could do that and talk to the guys down there. But at the time, now you're married, 2 kids, I'm teaching full time.
The kids were young, too.
Yeah, the kids were young, and my wife was like, oh, hell no. She's like, I support you, but, if you're going to deploy for a year, I'm not going to be very happy. And then the mantra, happy wife, happy life kind of kicks in. So it's like, oh, man. And I remember talking to the Navy officer recruiter. We had been talking for a while, and he was technically a real estate agent in San Diego. And I told him the situation. He's like, yeah. He's like, if she's not in, don't. It's not a good idea.
Right. At this point in your career,
right.
He's not recruiting you. He's recruiting the family.
Family at that point. Yeah, and that's what you're saying, especially in the reserve unit. And I'm not a 21-year-old single guy anymore. Right. So now I got a lot of baggage and a lot of responsibility. So he told me, he's like, yeah, probably better off not to do it.
Let me save you.
Yeah, exactly.
From being served divorce papers.
Right, exactly, and being miserable the whole time. And just to do 8 years to get the retirement, he's like, it's not worth it.
After judging that contest, I was like, damn it. I would have loved to have known that I might have signed up Navy or Air Force, done 8 years and been a journalist there. I mean, holy God. Yeah. And then, obviously, you were blowing up stuff, but have been a journalist during a war on the inside?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
I would have been cleaning up awards.
Yeah, so I was in the National Guard, and then I got out, and then I came back in. Just to do a couple more years after September 11th. Because I came back into the National Guard because I was going to I'm just going to go back in. I'm going to finish up and get my retirement. I really wanted to hit my 20 years.
Right.
But...
Because the package is different when you get there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You get money. That's the thing. I'm like, that's just on top of my retirement. I'm like, this would be sweet.
They get it. They know what they're doing.
Yeah. But you committed to 20.
Right.
And so, but when I came back, the National Guard unit, the public affairs office was rebuilding. It was a whole new unit, whole new people. And I was photo editor of our magazine, and I was running the photo aspect of the state division, which is cool responsibility for a kid in his 20s. And but so I come back in, and a whole new crew, and these guys they did a tour in Kosovo. And I was like,
oh, right, because you missed all that.
right, I missed it. I got out and I came back right around that.
That was a weird UN war.
Right, exactly. But they were talking about how they were similar situations.
Right.
And then all of a sudden now they had we had to beg, borrow, and steal to get our equipment. Now they had a hard Pelican case of just a Nikon, and they had a hard Pelican case of a Canon, and then you checked that out, and you had everything there. I was like, oh my gosh. So they really did it, and I was like, these guys this is different. This is high speed, but they had all this experience. They were showing me the photos and stuff, and I'm like, Eastern Europe and combat, and you get the cool dramatic colors with the snow.
And that was film.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
because they haven't tapped into digital at that point.
They were just starting.
Kosovo was in the 90s.
Yeah.
Bosnia, so.
Right. Yeah, it's primarily film.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, so that was just a whole different time.
Yeah. I mean, even the stuff that I was doing, I was learning how to make a photo lab in a bathroom.
Right.
That's part of the training. You got to set it up wherever you are, in a closet, in a building that you take over. So you got to set up the photo lab and do everything in the dark. And but yeah, now that it went to digital, actually, by the time I got in, by the time they came back from Kosovo, we were all digital. And they were just new Canon and Nikon digital cameras. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing.
Right. That was a game changer.
Yep. Yeah.
Right. There hadn't been social media, but now there's digital.
Well, they had the internet.
Right. The interwebs.
Yeah, exactly.
But even then, that was...
You've got mail.
That was an absolute different time. We get lost in thinking the late 90s the internet was so a child in the 90s.
Yeah, it was almost a toy.
Right. Yeah. And so, so we post stuff on the internet. Yeah, good luck having to find it dial up.
Right.
Yeah,
I mean, that screeching.
A lot of people still didn't have desktop computers at home or laptops. You had it at your work. So
the technology wasn't the same.
No.
It was just now kind of coming out. So it was really interesting to be around at that time and then be part of communications, as it was evolving quickly,
For the service branches, how did they go about budgets for that kind of stuff? Was it the same protocol like in a corporation? You got to put in your budgets at the end of the year and want stuff?
Yep, basically.
Did you feel that the services got stuff at the top, or were they kind of years behind on technology?
Well,
just because of the slow military movement.
Well, at that time I was in the National Guard.
Right.
So in the National Guard, so you have federal active duty, and then you have Federal Reserve, and then you have National Guard. National Guard is state troops.
Right.
And so it was, third generation hand-me-down kind of stuff at that point. So the National Guard was based, we were lucky to get equipment that we got, and we were excited about it. But we usually got stuff that active duty kicked down to the reserve, and reserve kicked over to us, or sometimes it would come down to active duty. Reserve would get the lion's share, and then Guard would get a little bit. So the active duty was, top of the line stuff, because they're getting stuff as it's coming out,
right?
And we should do this, and but and then there's a hierarchy of units at Fort Bragg getting high end stuff. Units in Alaska, not. They'll get it, but they'll get it slower.
Right, 6 months, a year later,
they'll get
whatever.
it before the National Guard does.
Right.
And then the National Guard, oh my gosh, this is great,
A friend of mine, Ron Tanawaki, who worked at Nikon, one of his jobs was training the military personnel in their gear. He would say they would spend a huge allotment of money on stuff because they could do it. They were going to. They had their newspapers. They were. And at this point, internet had been blowing up in the 2000s. They were constantly creating unbelievable content. Did you see any of that on your end, or what was the content you guys were making?
Funny. So the state of California, there was our state public affairs office, which was up in Sacramento. And then in California, California has an entire division, which is a large unit, like the 82nd Airborne Division. So we had the 40th Infantry Division, and it spans the entire state. So, and we were headquartered, the division public affairs, we were in our headquarters, which is in Los Alamitos. But there was also the state office and the state published a magazine called Grizzly.
Okay.
And yeah, because California.
Sure.
And then we published our magazine called Sunburst, which was the patch, Sunburst division. So state got a little bit more than we did because the proximity to Sacramento and then trickled down. We were usually kind of not necessarily in conflict with them. We had more resources than they did, but they had more, like we had more people and they had more resources, I guess. Yeah, so we were doing statewide publications. The difficulty, because I had my engineering experience, I was usually the guy that went after and talked to the engineering units, but I went out to a bunch of different units and did stories on them. But we, when there was flooding in Northern California, we would do stories on the engineering units that were called out to help with the flooding and help that. I did.
Now these pieces, were these, and I don't mean
they're fluff.
Yeah, to be disrespectful, are they fluff?
They're fluff.
Or could it all at any time, can you be like, let's try to make a really cool photo or...
Oh, yeah. No, we could. But
dig into the real story of why the dam broke. Or was it, the guys are just rebuilding the dam?
It was more focused on the challenges...
of the construction or whatever they're
the challenges that the Guard personnel faced going out there and how they're leaving their families behind to commit to this, like more feature driven stuff.
Okay.
And then the photos of them actually working. I did a lot of stories on the counter drug operation that the California National Guard worked a lot with the counter drug stuff. So we would do counter drug stories for up in the Green Triangle up in Chico.
Yeah, that's big up there.
Yeah. And we also did the engineering units were tasked, a lot of stuff is talking about the wall, right, and the border wall now. But they were already working on border fencing and border walls back, in the 90s.
Right, that's nothing new.
Yeah.
The engineers would go out there.
They were putting those things up. And so I would do stories on those guys and take photos of them working and, building the wall and that kind of stuff. So that's kind of what it was. I did a cool feature. This kind of also tells you, this is also, I got this through because, again, I was editor of the magazine at the time, that I wanted to have one that kind of was the epitome of what the National Guard was compared to an active duty. Because I came from Fort Bragg, and Fort Bragg was hardcore.
Right, that's a city.
Yeah,
that's a giant facility.
But I mean, you knew your stuff. You had spit polished boots every day, clean shaven. I went to National Guard, and I was like, yeah, we'll get around to it. I mean, National Guard's changed a little bit, but
you're in flip-flops, son.
It was from a high speed unit to a kind of a low speed unit, and. So the engineering unit that I was at when I came into National Guard was in Manhattan Beach. And
Manhattan Beach.
Yeah, exactly. So I had, and those guys are like, yeah, we got to do some training on a bridge reconnaissance. So let's go out to the pier. So we just hung out at the beach, and a couple guys did the actual reconnaissance. We just had ice cream and just came back, and so I was like, this is crazy. And then we had to do our physical training, our PT test, which is push-ups, sit-ups, and a 2-mile run. The 2-mile run was done on the Strand. Oh. And so I'm like, I remember doing that, and I was like, this is freaking unreal. So we're running down the Strand, and people are in the mornings coming out having their mimosas and stuff on the balconies of their homes, and there's people walking on the beach and they're waving to us and stuff, and swimsuits and bikinis and stuff. I'm like, oh my gosh, I got whiplash from looking around so much. So I thought, this is unreal. This is like a California experience. So I remember doing a big feature on that and do some photos with them running.
Yeah, it's a totally different. It's different.
It's a special thing just for California National Guard that you have this. Wisconsin National Guard isn't doing this.
No.
So that story got some traction after I did it. And the U.S. National Guard Bureau took that and kind of shared highlighting California and just running on the beach.
Yeah.
So.
Tough life.
Yeah.
So you're doing that time, but how do you transfer into journalism, PR, marketing to Fullerton College?
Right.
So you've gotten your degree now at Long Beach State.
Yep.
You've waited a little bit. You don't go to Cal State Fullerton for your master's until you've already been at Fullerton for a while as a professor. Right. Where did you move into Fullerton College?
So I fell in love with journalism.
Right. So
at Fullerton College. And so I had gone.
I apologize for that.
No, it's all right.
You should have fallen in love with like business or something.
I know. So I got into it there, and then I went to Long Beach, but I did a ton of internships. I did PR internships. I was stringing for the Times, and then I started working kind of at the Times. But then I went into magazines.
Yeah, you were hopping around all over the place.
Yeah, because I was just trying to find different opportunities and different experiences.
Car magazine.
Yeah, I ultimately ended up. Well, I was in a couple different car magazines.
Right.
But I ultimately ended up there, and then at that time, I was asked to. The woman who got me inspired, taught me a lot about journalism at Fullerton College, said,
right.
"Hey, you should come back and teach. There's a thing open." And I'm like, I'm doing journalism, right?
Right,
I'm like,
right. So
I used to laugh at people teaching it. I got the Woody Allen mindset.
Right.
Those who can do, those who can't teach, those who can't teach Jim.
Right. So that's what I'm saying. Like, where all of a sudden you're like, I'm doing it to let me teach you how to do it.
Right. That was not on my radar.
Because that's a big jump.
Yeah, and it's a whole different mindset.
It's a different set of gears.
Yeah. And I was like, I'm doing it. And I kept I told her, no, I don't think so. But she's like, no, I think you'd be really good at it. And I was like, no. But then I thought, well, and I was married, we were kind of doing the family thing.
This is early 2000s.
Right. We were kind of settling in, and I'm like, I'm looking forward, like, family, career, settling in, and journalism's kind of unstable. And I was like, well, and she's saying I should try it and be good at it. Maybe I should, because as my mentor, she kind of got me into it. So I was like, okay, I'll do it for you. And then, so I took the class and taught the class. I didn't know what I was doing, but I was the Hornet. It was a newspaper class. And I'm like, okay, we'll do it. And so I was hired, and I loved it. And like, and not just because you get summers and Fridays off, which are bonuses, but the fact that I can see the light bulbs turn on. Like, right. I can tell them, hey, pay attention to this, not this. The textbook says this, but that's just BS. You don't need to worry about that.
Right.
This is how you're actually going to run into it.
Right. This is how the
real world works.
Right.
And I thought, this is great. And then I'm like, I really like this. And I'm like, and I could see me doing this. This is really good. And they said, great, because there's a full-time position coming up. I'm like, I could do this full-time. This is great. And that's when they said, yeah, but you have to get your master's. I was like, oh, pump the brakes on that one.
Right.
Slow down on that one. Nobody said anything about more school.
And that was always the thing that they got me. They always wanted me to do something. And they're like, yeah. I'm like, oh, well, come on.
Exactly. But you have to have your degree. And I was like, oh, man.
But I've been working for 20 years.
Yeah. Does that count? and so academia, you have to have that as a minimum qualification. So I was like, oh, man. So I'm looking around. I'm like, C's got degrees, kind of a thing. I got my degree. And, but I excelled in all the journalism classes. It's just that the earlier classes I didn't do too well in, but I got it done.
Right. It's all that matters.
Yeah. But then I looked around. I'm like, well, let's see. I was working at the magazine full-time in Placentia, and then I was teaching part-time at Fullerton College, and I was living. I think we were still living in Fullerton at the time.
Off Associate.
Yeah, I think we were over there at that time. And I was like, well, I guess I could do this. And I got to find something that makes sense. Cal State Fullerton has a master's program. So I'm like, oh, I'll do that. That's just right in my little triangle
right.
thing.
I'm right back home from right 1989.
I'm doing it. So I was able to do that while we were living and finished. So I was taking classes, teaching class, working at the magazine, and then we had a baby during that time. So it was a lot going on. So we ended up, I ended up getting my master's there from Cal State Fullerton. And then at that time, I remember the position came open just before I got my master's. And so I applied for it, and I remember the interview with the president, and she said, if you get this, we're going to, basically when it got to the point where they're going to offer it to me, they said, we're offering it to you, but you have to get your master's. I'm like, I'm so almost done at this point. I'm like, I'm going to get it done. And they said, okay. as long as you get it done.
Did they give you like you got 18
they gave me
months or?
they gave me like a day, not a day, like
a day?
like a year.
Oh, an online class, huh?
Yeah, exactly. Like a year left, but I got it done. And before that, and I sent her the degree, and I'm like, see, I got it. So cool.
Right.
So, but yeah. So I got hired before I got the degree, but I got the degree to solidify.
And a lot of times they'll do that. Like if
Yeah.
you're on track for it, they'll.
I was almost done.
Right.
No, it was just a timing thing.
Because I just remember you telling me, "Hey, I'm going to do this full time," and I just thought, this is the most craziest time in journalism, right?
Because this is the most craziest time in journalism
at that point, because it's becoming multimedia, digital.
Yep.
People were adding audio.
Yep.
The internet now had started to become something.
Yep.
Post September 11th, so that weird switch.
Yep.
That was crazy.
Yeah.
And there still wasn't social media.
Right.
The social media was basically still on the internet.
On the internet, yeah.
Which is archaic, but that's how it was, kids.
Right.
You had to drag your computer around to be social.
Right. Chat rooms and that kind of stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I was just thinking, you're going to teach these kids digital and multimedia. Yeah. And wow, that is so overwhelming because it was just evolving so quickly.
Right.
And who would have thought that would have been easy compared to now?
Right.
Right? Like, oh, you're only teaching them that?
Right.
Now?
Right.
Then you're like, oh, it's crazy.
Right.
Because I remember you having me in for lectures, and I'd be like, you got to know this, this, and this.
Yeah.
Now it's like a laundry list. It's like a joke.
Well, a lot of that stuff they should already know.
Sure.
And if they don't, they're screwed. But the other stuff is now, okay, this is how you capitalize your Instagram stories and how you utilize this and check your
analytics of
check
stuff.
your likes and see how your audience engagement comes in.
Right.
It's like, where did that come in from? You look at my old school professors from my when I was going for my bachelor's, these guys from the Washington Post that were talking about Watergate still, and their experiences at the Washington Post with Bradley, and I was like, we don't have typewriters anymore.
Right. Well, can you imagine how that story would have been broke today?
Yeah.
It would have been broke on Twitter. The problem is it never would have made it to the paper.
Yeah.
Because it would have been leaked.
It would have been out. Yeah.
It would have been leaked, and it would have never become Watergate in the Washington Post. It would have been on one of their Twitters, so they would have decided to do it a different way. It wouldn't even have been a good multimedia piece.
Nope.
That's the problem.
No.
And so the way
guys broke into the campaign headquarters.
Right.
Whatever.
And 180 characters with emojis on it.
Yeah.
Two guys running out of a hotel room.
Right.
Yeah, that's the interesting part. So you're doing that, and you're doing it right during this, at that point, revolutionary change in journalism to the web.
Yeah.
Because when you and I were in the 80s, it was a newspaper, it was a radio.
Right.
Now you're teaching them there's going to be this bigger thing. Trust me, it's the internet.
Right.
It's here, and it's going to get bigger.
Right.
I don't know if those kids in 2005 understood how much bigger it was going to be, because now those kids are probably in their 30s at some point. And they're probably going, holy crap.
Right. Yeah. Some of my first students are still working at one of them in particular is still working at the Register, and she's gone through the evolutions and stuff, with the, publications and websites and OC Post and but all those kind of,
and they just had layoffs again,
right? And those kind of things. She's been able to survive, but the thing I guess that really, and I guess I didn't know this before about myself, but I started to realize that I still like learning. And then my thing is, I like technology. Like we didn't have a lot when we were younger.
Right, we didn't.
It wasn't there. TV and we got cable.
And very few people had computers, like real computers.
Right. And then as that grew, you can only play Oregon Trail for so long, but as that evolved and video games and stuff like that, and the idea of how this technology works, I've always been like really into it, and so. In teaching it, knowing that that I need to keep learning in order to. I don't like stagnating. Right. That's my thing. Is I don't want to sit back, and I could easily do that. And I see some of my colleagues and stuff, especially in other areas, because every once in a while I was like, man, God, I wish I could just teach math, because math doesn't change.
No, 2 and 2 still 4.
Pythagoras made that theorem, in BC, and it's still used today. Like, why do they even have new textbooks? But anyways,
right.
Nothing changes. So, but I was like, man, that would be so easy. I'm sure it's hard, but to their version of hard. But the idea of with media is you have to just keep up with everything, and everything keeps changing.
Right.
But I like that. That's that adrenaline rush that I was talking about, like the blowing stuff up. It's kind of been replaced by, I got to learn this. I got to learn how to use this and how to bring this into technology and I got to teach the students on this. My students stopped printing the newspaper, went all digital, and that's still kind of seen in the state among my peers as far as instructors at other colleges, almost a sacrilege. Because
right.
but I'm like, man, if I'm teaching these students, and we've had this conversation, I'm teaching these students the skills they're going to need 3 to 4 years down the road. Are they going to need to size a photo? Are they going to need to lay out a page in InDesign? They could, but they could get that on a YouTube video if they really wanted to.
Right.
I don't need to teach them that skill set. I need to teach them how to work in a multimedia kind of capacity. I need to teach them the technology. I need to have them think in those mindsets on how to create a video, how to post it on social media, how to do a podcast, and how to edit audio, and then how to take photos and multiple photos and that kind of stuff. In addition to writing and capturing all that information. So there's a lot. But I like that technical side, and that's what kind of drives me to I want to keep learning so I can learn to teach them the most up-to-date information.
Right, and that's always impressed me about you and your teaching is that at our age, right, we're 48, that if you were 18 learning from a 48-year-old, he was talking about Watergate.
Yeah.
You're not talking about Watergate.
No.
You're talking about the next app, the next this, the next that. You're up. And that's the advantage of having a professor that's up on it and not still going, wax layout was fantastic.
Right.
Yeah, I'm sure it was. But there's more communication being done on Twitter, which good or bad, it's just being done. And the reach is greater than ever at any newspaper or magazine could have ever thought of.
Well, we're now talking about how to incorporate TikTok into the communication aspect. How can you utilize that as a tool to bring information in, like Snapchat was too. So, there are peers that in other disciplines, in other areas that wouldn't know what TikTok is. Right. Or just laugh at it. And it's like, well, this is what your kid's using.
Right. Now, okay, so you say TikTok. Does that worry you that even the military's told their soldiers do not use it, stay off it? There's obviously information that goes straight to China. It's owned by China. Does that kind of stuff, do you tell them, or at least the students understand, there's doors being open of information that it's a weird thing to know that if you read the Wall Street Journal in 1980, the Russians weren't reading what you were reading.
Right. Well, they were reading the newspapers that you were reading too, but they weren't reading your private information.
But they didn't know what section of the newspaper you were reading.
Right.
Now,
Siri wasn't listening and saying, can I show you this ad?
Right. TikTok's telling them or anybody, you were here, you were there, you were this long with this many people. That's the difference.
Right.
The Russians could have been reading the Wall Street Journal, but they weren't reading what you were reading.
Right.
What you found interesting.
Right. And that's, with the students, we always have those conversations. And usually a student or two might bring it up, or if they don't, then we bring it up. I just want to make them aware.
Sure.
And, they can do whatever they want to with it, but, we're going to talk about it and just make them aware of this. It was kind of like when social media first came out, right? And I use this example a lot because it's kind of, people were thinking that, I put this on social media, but I have a private account. It's like, no, you don't. No, you don't.
You don't have private anything.
The idea that there was that rash of beauty queens that had to give up their their crowns because they found something on their Facebook where they were doing keg stands in Cabo or something like that. And, oh, how did you find that? That's on my account. That's private. And no, it's not. It's public social media. So ever since then, we always have the conversation with students, no matter what class it is, about, if you don't want it out, leave it on your desktop.
Right.
And
even that's dangerous.
Yeah, I know.
Because that backed up to the cloud.
Depending on where your cloud dump is. But, those kind of things that but don't put it out on social media and think that it's going to be only seen by you and your friends.
Right.
So I used to do another thing that's funny. I guess it was creepy, but I stopped it because I realized, oh yeah, I guess it's creepy. There was a low time in 2009-ish, I think, where our enrollments were down. So we were tasked to do a lot more recruiting. And I'm not in a biology class, so I don't get a bunch of students that are coming in for general education.
Right.
They take my classes as elective because they want to. So let people know about what these classes are. And knowing social media, I was using TweetDeck and stuff. So I'm looking at different things. So anytime somebody would mention like Fullerton College or Fullerton or something like that, and somebody would be like, yeah, I can't believe I'm so excited to enroll at Fullerton College or whatever, and they would tweet that out. And then it would pop up and I would be like, so I would send them a tweet and I would tweet back to them and say like, hey, not in private message. I would just tweet on there.
Right.
I was responding saying, hey, if you need any classes, I know some great classes to take at Fullerton College, and send that out. And they would be like, how did you know? How did you see my stuff? I'm like, well, you put it out on social media.
People have no idea how it really works.
Right. They just think it's just my little bubble.
My 12 people.
Right. And no, it's not. Everything's searchable.
Right.
And but I wasn't recruiting as many people, and people were kind of getting, how'd you get my? I'm like, I didn't. It's TweetDeck. Here's the link to what TweetDeck is. Enjoy yourself. And so I would educate people that way, but I wasn't recruiting people. And I realized, I guess that would be kind of creepy if you were like a 19-year-old kid or whatever, and then all of a sudden you got this message from out of nowhere, just random person saying, hey, take my classes. I'm like, you know what? No, now it's okay.
Sure.
But back in the day, it was...
How did you find me?
Yeah, how did you find me? So, but those are examples, again, I tell students about with social media and how that was back then. Just think of what it is now. So, and it's just going to... And then think about what it's going to be in 5 years and 10 years. So as they're going to get in the professional field, it's just going to get more and more accessible, and things are just going to be out there. So you just got to be aware of what's going on.
Right. So now this little boy at third grade who falls in love with flying, right, gets rejected.
Yeah.
Doesn't make it happen. Tries it again, gets rejected. Somehow through technology and the learn of constantly wanting to learn, how in the hell does this goofy technology, probably like 10 years ago, giant drones, become something you're going to incorporate into a college?
Yeah.
Because I remember going to... It wasn't even CES. It was NAB. And they had, and this is, I don't know, 2010 or 11.
Yeah.
They had them, but they were the size of like
bigger,
coffee
like
tables.
Mini helicopters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're like, they can fly for 8 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah.
What does it do? It flies for 8 minutes.
Look at this footage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's 8K.
Yeah. Yeah. Now it's 8K.
The size, not 8K video. It's 8K total. That was the file size.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Now it's 8K.
Yeah. The quality is, you can see the pores on that.
Right. How did you jump ahead of that and decide, I see this?
So I still don't think I'm ahead. So that's what I think.
Right.
But you know what? That's the thing that keeps me going.
You've got something that nobody else was doing, or at least you're ahead of the curve.
Right. Yeah. And that's the thing that this fear.
Because I went, what?
Yeah. This fear of being behind, I think, is what propels me to keep going forward, and which is a good thing. I think that's good because competition. I'm trying to get ahead, but. So yeah, with drones, it's funny. I was starting to hear stuff about drone journalism and stuff. And
what year?
Oh my gosh, it was 2015, 2014. Yeah, so about 5 years ago.
Okay.
And and this guy at University of Nebraska, Lincoln, started creating drone stuff, and I was like, that's weird.
How did you find him or see him? Was it like a seminar?
Yeah, he did a class. He put out a thing like, hey, I got some money. Y'all can come out and do this class. And I was like, I felt the little aviation thing kind of coming back a little bit, but I was like,
I've been rejected so many times.
Well, I know. Well, I couldn't put the two together.
Sure.
So I was trying to think, how do drones?
Now it's easy.
Yeah, I said, do you have a drone parked over the person's shoulder while you're doing interviews, and you capture it like a TV camera?
Right.
And how does that work? And I just didn't have this. I had this weird vision. I just didn't see how it works. So I'm like, you know what? No, I'm not interested. Plus, who wants to go to Nebraska? No offense. But I was like, no. So I kind of put it away, but I knew it was still kind of percolating there, right? After that, then National Press Photographers Association partners with Poynter Institute, and they start doing like a road show. Okay, they start doing this training for drone journalism. And they do like University of South Carolina, Nebraska, Wisconsin, and University of Oregon. And I think they did another one in there, but I wasn't paying attention. So I was like, you know what? I just looked at it and I was like, you know what? I think this might be a thing.
But still, you say drone journalism, and I still go,
I know.
How are you? Are you flying the camera and interviewing?
Right. And that's same as here. I was like, this is something, maybe I should look at it.
It's a niche of a niche.
And I put the paperwork in, and I said, I kind of want to, maybe I'll go to this one in Oregon. And so I went to that training.
And this is what, 15, 16?
This is, 15, 16. I gotta go back and remember. Maybe 16. It's either early 16 and 15. It's 16, because 16 is when Part 107 came out. So it was right when Part 107 came out.
Okay.
And because that was the big thing. And so 16, we go up there, and I go up there, and what's interesting, and I was there with all these amazing photojournalists, right, in the crowd. All these LA Times Pulitzer Prize winning photojournalists and president of the MPPA and stuff are there, and we're all learning at the same time. We're all trying to find, they're teaching all this stuff about drones and drone photojournalism and drone journalism in general, and how to use it. And it was that case. It was taking that class. It was a 3-day training, real quick training. And then there was a guy named Johnny Miller who is there speaking. He has if you look at his website, he has a program. He's American, and he lives in South Africa, and he's been working on a program called Unequal Spaces. And what it does is they use the drones, and there's a Drone Africa where they fly, and they started in South Africa, but now it's global. And what they do is they show economic disparity between the haves and the have-nots. Things that you can't see on the ground. Mm-hmm. Like if you're just in ground level and you see a shack and you see some mansions and stuff, and it's like, oh, okay, there's a road, that kind of stuff. But you look at, if you go to Unequal Spaces, you go to the website, and now he's got all these different communities around the world, and these aerial shots where you just see, right? And what that kind of did it for me. That made me realize, perspective. It changes perspective. It allows you to see things you can't normally see. It's one thing to, like the Paradise fire, right? That took out the city of Paradise up in Northern California. It's one thing to put a camera crew on the ground and take pictures from the ground, and you see devastation, you interview people and that kind of stuff, but it's like, oh man, that's terrible. But you put a drone up and you see scope. Right. You see how big and the impact. You're like, oh my God.
Yeah, the outlines of lots, streets.
Right. The houses that were there that are no longer there. And you see just the like I said, the magnitude of things like that you wouldn't see from the ground. Right. So it gives a perspective. So I realized, oh my gosh, this is powerful. And so at that time I drank the Kool-Aid. And
that was good Kool-Aid at that point, because was the first.
Yeah, it was early on. Yeah,
you're jumping into the new pool.
Right. And I came back down. I finished studying, and I got my Part 107 certification, and I told my administration, and I already actually was working on creating a class for drone journalism, and I said, I'm putting this drone journalism class through.
Now, when you're talking to your boss,
yeah,
he's telling you what? Like, you want to do what?
Well, no, you would think.
Right, because he's probably looking at it going, journalism?
Right.
You want to add to journalism?
Well, I came in, and I have a great administration right now. Not a plug, but I do. They're great, really supportive of stuff, and moving forward in technology. They don't want to stagnate. They want to be cutting edge, and so
That's good to have.
Yeah, no, I know, I want to hold on to them as long as I can.
Right.
They always transfer out. But I told him, I said, yeah, hey, I got my license. I'm a certified drone pilot. I'm creating a class, and this is something that we're going to start doing now. And they said, hey, yeah. Basically what they said was like, wow, drones are cool. Why don't you look at starting a program in drones? I'm like, what do you mean, me, Kinosabe?
Whoa.
Yeah. What do you mean start a program? But what that did, that kind of lit the fire, and I started thinking, I'm like, you know what? Let me look into that. And so I spent the next year and a half, almost 2 years, really researching and investigating, getting into it, talking to people, looking at the fact that there's no other programs like that out there.
That's what I was going to ask. Was there any blueprint in front of you to say oh, that's how they did it at school X?
Nebraska was pretty cutting edge, but specifically for journalism. And what I did was I realized that this goes beyond journalism, right?
Oh, yeah.
And that's what
was Nebraska using it for farming, or were they doing journalism?
Journalism.
Okay.
Right.
Because you can now have a drone do so many things.
Oh, right. Well, that's what I realized.
Right.
It was just this, it's this rabbit hole. I'm just going to go in here, but I'm like, oh, and there's more down. So I just keep going further and further and deeper. And I realized that this could be so much bigger because these are used for so many amazing things. And so I thought this has to be broader. So then that changed the scope of what the program is going to be. And, even today, people are still like, oh, how's that drone journalism thing going? Well, it's not really just journalism, it's drones. So we broadened out, and basically I'm still rooted in journalism, but I've gone beyond journalism. And so we created the program in what's called our tech classes. So it's kind of a broad-based one, because students that aren't interested in journalism will not take a journalism class.
Sure, no.
Even though it's drones, they won't take it because it's like, oh my gosh, I bet there's writing involved. Yeah,
right.
A little bit, but not much. But if I put it under technology, then it's like a broad-based. And so I thought, well, how can I do it to where, and with our area is workforce development, is this creating job skills. How can somebody learn this and apply it to a career? And I don't want to be stuck in just journalism because that's such a small niche market.
Right.
Yes, we'll have that. But I also want to get into drones for mapping and surveying. I want to get into drones for construction. I want to get into drones and teach them how to use it for public safety. And I want to use it for all these different areas. And
agriculture,
right.
You name it.
Well, here's the thing. Funny you bring up agriculture, because I have... So I forget about that. I forget about agriculture because we're in Orange County.
Right.
But so last semester in my piloting class, well, prior to this, I had a student in Fullerton College, and she's taken some IT classes and cybersecurity, but her father owns a agriculture consulting firm up outside of Bakersfield,
Central California.
Yeah,
it's huge agriculture.
And so she heard about the drone class, and her dad wanted her to get involved in it. So she's been my kind of go-to person, and she's great. But when so she's been in a couple of my classes, and then last semester, my Saturday piloting class, I get this guy comes in, his guy and his daughter, and he comes in and it's Saturday for the semester, and he's like, okay, hey, I'm coming down from Fresno, we're taking the class from Fresno because there's nothing up in the Central Valley on drones at colleges and stuff. And my daughter's in college, and we're coming down to get this training. And I was like, oh, okay. No pressure there, but yeah. And I was like, okay, yeah, well, I'll teach you, and I was thinking in my mindset, well, maybe they got relatives, they'll come down here and make a weekend out of it and go back up and whatever. Nope. We have a coffee maker in the classroom, so he comes in, takes a class, and he fills up his coffee at the end. He's like, okay, we got a long trip back. So he was coming down every Saturday with his daughter. And they were taking a class from Fresno to learn so they could go back and apply it to their farming business up there.
That is huge.
And I was like, what is this about? Because there was nothing in the Central Valley.
Nobody, I guarantee you at Fullerton College, nobody is driving outside of the county.
No.
Right, to take bio, music, drama.
Right.
Nothing.
Right. And again, that just reminds me that, oh my gosh, this is huge, and the applications are so big for this. And
we're just scratching the surface.
Right. It's still the Wild West to some extent. But a lot of students, I always tell them, I said, right now, nobody's saying no. Right. So you can come in like, I want to use drones for this. A lot of people are like, okay. If you can justify it, if it makes an argument, then go for it. So it's still a lot of the people that are like half-assed, a lot of businesses and stuff that are not, they're falling by the wayside, and that's cool. But now it's getting down to the core. Now it's just getting to the point where it's like, now it's getting real, right? This is getting kind of more standardized. This is getting more professional, and this is moving forward. But that, again, all this stuff with the new technology, the fact that, like I said, I don't want to ever be behind.
Right.
And the way that this is just formulating the opportunities that students are going to have just fuels me to keep going.
Right. And, I mean, if I would have told you 5 years ago that it would have become now a staple for realtors to have a drone pilot at their disposal, I'd be like, why?
Right.
Why? I can see the house. I want to see the inside. Well, now you can see what it looks like from an aerial view from the top.
You see the neighborhood.
You can see from the second story out what you're going to see. I mean, there's all kinds of, it just makes a better video.
Right. And some of the drones too is you can take some of the drones, and the better companies that will come in and shoot, and they'll bring a drone into the house.
Yes.
And they just continue the shot. So now you come from the neighborhood in the front door, and you start walking through, and especially the smaller drones, or just get it to where you can hold it and then just continue the shot all the way through.
I saw a shot.
They're getting more savvy.
Right. So this was extremely high end. It was Beverly Hills, Brentwood.
Yeah.
From the distance, right. I mean, but it got through a standard sized door, so it wasn't a massive drone.
Right.
But they mic'd it up, or she was mic'd up, so they synced it up. So she was talking. The drone is from a distance. As it comes in, her voice is synced up. She opens the door, welcomes them. She goes, the drone and her walk through the house, and she opens the sliders, and she goes out the back. And she goes like, this is your backyard. And the drone goes up and out, and it does a tilt, shows it, and fly. And you're like, that's the intro.
Yeah. I've seen stuff like that down, like like Monarch and Pelican, that kind of stuff down in
that's a lot of
Newport
work.
Coast. Yeah. But that's going to sell.
Right.
That's what sets you as a realtor apart from your competition.
Right.
In order to do that, you have to know how to video and have to have some skilled workers with you.
Right.
So, yeah, and I mean that's just drone photography and drone cinematography and stuff. Every time you watch anything on HGTV, every other shot is a drone shot.
Oh God, yeah. We were watching a surfing thing the other day.
Drone shot.
Yeah.
And my family hates me because I keep mentioning, hey, drone shot. Shut up, Dad. I know, Dad. So
you don't know. You don't understand.
Right.
How much better everything would have been with a great aerial shot and not having the down turbulence of the helicopter when they were doing this movie or that movie.
Well, also, so I binge watched the show Ozark.
Okay, yep.
Great show. And now I got Jenny watching Ozark, so I'm watching it again the second time. And with her, I'm like, we got to watch this part. And but I know the company. I know the guys who shot all the drone shots for Ozark. They're a company called Cinedrones, and and I've been talking to them for a few years and just picking their brain. Actually, the head of Cinedrones is on our Fullerton College Fullerton Drone Lab Advisory Committee. So picking his brain about what skills people need for cinematography and that kind of stuff. So, it's just, and he just keeps saying, it's not going anywhere, right? Because the drones are going to get smaller, the technology is going to get better, and you're going to be able to do all this cool thing.
Cameras are going to get better.
Oh yeah,
right.
Yeah, and that's just, here's the thing, that's just photo video. There's this whole other aspect. If you watch, other shows like Exploration Unknown and all those guys where they go and do mapping and they do the LiDAR stuff. So we're teaching that as well. There's so many different applications. Like I said, it's just one of those things where it's like an iceberg. You just kind of feel all this. There's all this other stuff that's out there that students, if you're interested, can learn and can apply it to whatever field they're in.
Did you see any drones when you were in your military service? Or would that have been something where, because the military always develops stuff first, or they touch it first.
Right.
Would it have been a Special Forces, Navy SEAL kind of, like whatever they might have had, like a glider with a camera that gives a really bad, crappy signal?
Right. Because that was back in the day when technology was, they were probably just like, one of those little rubber band things and kind of throwing it out there.
Because everybody's excited just watching night footage of Wolf Blitzer on a building in a hotel watching, Baghdad go to hell.
Right. They were already doing... there was already autonomous systems in military use, but it wasn't at. It was way in the pay grade up ahead, right?
But did you hear any whispers? Like I hear.
No, because it wasn't. It didn't trickle down at that point. We were just so impressed with the Apache helicopters and that kind of stuff. So,
A-10.
Right.
Okay, so now, within the last 5 years, how? And obviously you're not in the military, but you're in this inner circle.
Yeah.
How prevalent do you think it is now for a group, a battalion, or guys who go out infantry to send out a drone over a ridge a mile away before you have to go stomping into something bad? Yeah,
they have it. I keep tabs on that because also the other thing too is Southern California is still big in defense.
Right.
And in defense companies and defense manufacturers that have been at workshops and stuff with Northrop Grumman and those kind of things, and I understand what they're doing. I was at
and a drone company can be at a strip mall garage. It doesn't have to be like
Tesla,
right? It doesn't have to look like Boeing in Long Beach, where it's just massive building.
Right.
It could be at a 4,000 square foot warehouse.
Right. There's a couple down here in Irvine that are doing drone related stuff.
Wouldn't know.
No, they're just but these guys, there's even counter drone issues, but that's a whole other thing. There's a big counter drone company in Yorba Linda, but they have smaller handheld squad size drones. So you're down to a squad, 4 or 5 soldiers or 4 or 5 Marines that they open up their pack and they have a little squad size drone. They just pop it up, fly it over, and just get an idea of what's over the ridge, and then it either comes back, or if it doesn't, that's okay, $30. But a lot of their drones, military drones, will self-destruct.
Right.
They have a self-destruct button in there if they have to,
so
they can't fall into military or enemy hands.
Right. So what would that be for a consumer drone, like a DJI what? Or what would that be equivalent to?
You're looking at like a Tilo or something like that, like maybe even smaller. They're just almost like a little Dragonfly kind of thing. Of course, military can't use DJI, but because of Chinese spying. But the those what was I gonna say? Yeah, they're just little, like as big as your hand. Like the Mavic Air size is almost like a little patty, like a hamburger patty.
Right.
But even narrower.
Changer.
Yeah, narrower. So they can just throw it up. It's almost like a big Dragonfly.
Right.
And so they're rolling those out now. And like Ranger units have those, and Special Forces have those, and they're trying to get it down to where it's down to everybody.
Well, if something's so cheap like that is just.
They have smaller ones, and they also have the bigger ones that they can go out and see get an area, get a perspective, and then come back down, and they know the lay of the land. Yeah.
Right.
Oh yeah. No, it's a game changer for the military.
Okay, so how do you see, Greg? Because now we had fires last year, and and all these morons are putting up drones, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, drones go up, it means helicopters come down.
Yeah. Or any kind of aircraft.
Right,
comes
anything.
out. Yeah.
Morons, right? You got something water drop, big plane. You don't need a Phantom going through a turbine.
Right.
So how much do you see firefighter departments and police using drones?
Oh, yeah.
Because I remember early on, it was like, we don't want the police to have drones. They'll be spying on us.
I
hate to tell you, the kid in the neighborhood's doing that.
Right, exactly.
I mean, we did a shoot here,
Right.
a TAVIC shoot in Beverly Hills, and we have these beautiful models in the backyard in skimpy suits, and there was some young kid flying over, watching, going,
hey,
wow, look at these
yeah.
beautiful girls.
Yeah.
Well, you're in Beverly Hills. Show me an ugly woman.
Yeah, right.
So everybody's seeing you. Where do you see fire and police using it?
They're already using it. LA County Fire. LA County Fire is huge with drones. They were one of the first.
Do they have a company or division? Like, how do they?
Yeah,
work it out?
they have it incorporated within their program. There's actually public safety right now is the hot button area for drones. And most major police departments have drones.
So, okay, do you have to be, like, we have a friend, Franco, who's a fireman, and we've talked to him about this. Do you have to be a firefighter, get your license, and then you're still in that group as a firefighter, or can you be an independent contractor working for the fire department?
So
how do they?
You're a firefighter.
Okay, so you're a firefighter.
They train and certify the firefighters because that way you know what you're doing. We have a couple police officers on our advisory committee too, so I talk to them about what law enforcement is using for public safety.
Same thing with them. You're a cop and you fly a drone.
Right. They tell us as far as training goes, because I'm like, oh yeah, we should do this and this, and he's like, well, slow down. He's like, you can go ahead and train them to get certified as pilots to get the Part 107 certification.
Right.
We'll train them the rest of the way. We'll train them our way.
Okay.
But that's why I'm working with our Administration of Justice program, who's really excited about drones, and I'm developing classes with them as far as with how to use drones for like search and rescue, how to use drones for night operations, how to use drones for accident reconstruction. Like if it,
right.
I was at a workshop at a conference, and the head of Nevada's state troopers, and he's head of their air operations program, so helicopters and that kind of stuff. He was saying he was saying this was a couple years ago. He said that probably in about 5 or 10 years, every patrol car will have some kind of drone in it.
Really?
Yeah, just because if you go out to an accident, if you're
makes total sense.
Put a drone up, and you get aerial perspectives. You can see where the skid marks are, and you can see where everything's laid, so you can get that aerial picture, bring it back down, so then you can go from there.
Part of your report.
Right. So, so it makes total sense.
Yeah.
There is a guy.
That's such an unbelievable angle, though. You didn't think about 10 years ago.
Oh yeah, they didn't have the technology, but now the technology's there. They're like, oh yeah.
Well, you did, but it was a helicopter.
Right.
And who's gonna? Oh, by the way, can you fly the helicopter over? We'll get a shot of this. No, not gonna.
We don't have
happen.
enough money for the gas.
Yeah. Now it's like, hold on, let me pull out of my pocket.
Right.
Did I charge it?
Right. In Orange County, pretty much every beach city has drones.
Really?
Huntington.
See, this is great because this is why I want people to, if they listen to this, they say like, there's an opportunity for a career you didn't think of.
Oh yeah. There's so many. But yeah, Huntington Beach and Newport, in particular Huntington Beach, were big early adopters of drones. Torrance PD, there was one funny watching a Torrance PD video they were showing at a workshop. They were following this guy. So this guy was running from the cops. And so they had the helicopter overhead, I think it was like a newscopter. But the drone is following. Guy doesn't hear the drone because the helicopter.
Right.
So the drone's flying over. The guy jumps in, goes over, and they're just following him. And the drone operator is just telling them where they're going. And then he dives underneath like this covering, this tarp. The cop kicks it to thermal and says, oh, yeah, here he is. And they told him where he is, and they just came in and got him, And so, before you had the helicopter, but now they'll be able to put up drones,
right?
And do in a less expensive way, in a more accessible way, and probably in a, again, who kicks over to thermal? If you hopefully your helicopter has thermal imaging,
right?
But these drones have dual cameras, so you can just kick over from RGB to thermal, and there it is.
So someone like Huntington Beach or Torrance, what kind of drone are they flying?
Most of them are flying DJI.
Okay, but but like a Phantom or a Maverick or something you just...
They'll do Mavics. They'll have the biggest thing that most...
something you can keep in your police cruiser, pull out of a case.
Right, but most of them, what they do like is the Matrice series, the Matrice 210, which is like a heavier duty drone, and usually you can have the dual cameras on it. But now the smaller drones, like the Mavic 2s, can have the dual cameras, have thermal and RGB. They like the Mavics because they're quick and easy. I think some of them might have a couple Phantoms, but they aspire to get up to the Matrice level. Chula Vista PD is part of this more federal program, and San Diego is a test site for trying different things for easing regulations. I forgot the number, but they released the number of arrests that they made based off of drones, and it was just huge.
Wow,
huge, in like in the last year, and. Yeah, so yeah, like big in public safety.
So definitely this is not going away, and this is obviously just the tip of the iceberg to being
really
the ability to actually make a career, or there's an advantage. Cops, fire, public safety.
Yeah, public safety is huge. Like I said, cops use it to test hotspots. They'll look at like the La Habra Heights. They'll look at vegetation growth to see where it's going to be a bunch of brush fire fuel.
Right.
They'll do stuff like that.
Is it big for like avalanche recovery, something like that, where you're doing like alpine and you're like try to find somebody with thermal? It seems like if you look out in a vast whiteness, we could find somebody.
Search and rescue.
Right.
Search and rescue is huge. I'm talking to a Japanese company that has a headquarters here in Tustin. It's headquartered in there, but in Japan. But they're trying to get in the U.S. market, and they're doing a lot of drones. They do a lot of real-time broadcasting from drones, so you can stream it on multiple tablets or centers, and you can look at it as cloud-based, and they can go out. And they were all prepared to do the Olympics. They were all ready. Yeah, they were all set to do they were all contracted to do the Olympics and coverage for that in real-time footage. And but they showed me this one about Japanese search and rescue up in the mountains and stuff, and I couldn't understand, but they were explaining to me what was going on and how they did this video footage and how this training and how they found the skier and stuff like that. So public safety. But we run into things that you don't even think of. Again, the whole mapping and imaging. Our program is going to be collaborating with the Orange County Water District,
right,
and doing some really cool stuff as far as looking at their basins and photographing those, but also looking at vegetation growth, like at Prado Dam, and doing some like, again, depth mapping and vegetation analysis. Like, I didn't even think about that. So,
and you're doing some stuff with Long Beach State
with the Shark Lab,
right?
So yeah, we were at an air show, and that actually triggered. That opened up a whole another spectrum to me, basically. They came to us. They saw us at an air show, and they said, "Hey, we've been looking for you." I was like, "Oh, really?" And they said, "Yeah, we're the Shark Lab. We talked for a long time, and they're doing this 2-year project of mapping and analyzing the Southern California coast and the coastline of where juvenile great white sharks." It's a hotbed for juvenile great white sharks, and it has been for decades.
Right.
So you're always swimming with sharks out there in the summer. They said they want to capture all this footage and catalog it. So that way they're also training LA County, Orange County, state lifeguards on how to spot, how to identify sharks, and when shark season is, how close they usually get to humans, where humans usually go. So they have one guy, a grad student who's a drone pilot, and he's got their drone, but he's doing basically from Santa Barbara to Solano Beach, and for 2 years, and he's just like, I need help.
Right, that's a land and water.
Yeah, so we said, sure. And so we've been starting to go out. The COVID thing kind of put a pause on a lot of things, but we still go out and do some drone footage and just randomly kind of go around. And he'll send messages like, "Hey, Ventura, we got a couple pings up here, and we know there's sharks up in Ventura. Come on up." And I'm like, "I'm not going to Ventura," but I've been down to Carlsbad, and we've been to San Clemente, and that kind of stuff. So, but you can use them for marine biological research. There's a guy.
That's crazy.
That has an Inspire 2, which is a ridiculously expensive drone, which is a great drone, and he's got little petri dishes attached to him. And he'll fly over whales as whales are breaching, and they spray, and he catches the mucus, the snot, the whale snot, basically, on the drone. So then he can analyze it, because he catches it in a petri dish. So he just flies that drone off of a boat and just flies and hovers, covers over whales, and then they breach and spray. And he catches that spray and comes back and uses that for research. And it's like, I didn't think about using that for that kind of marine research.
Jesus.
And then and we have our PE department at Fullerton College. Our athletic director came to me and said, "Hey, Jay, we went in on the drones." What? What do you mean?
Is that Scott?
Scott.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Yeah, we went in on your drone program." I'm like, well, why? We want to add it to our coaching certificate. And I was like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. Coaches need to learn how to fly drones because coaches are using for drones.
Right.
And a lot of high schools are doing that. And technically they're doing it in violation. Right, because they think, hey, I got this at Best Buy, and I'm just going to do this and check out the photos that I got. Right, and we can teach them how to do it legally and how to do it more effectively,
safely.
Right, and safer and smarter. And so that way, if they ever run into a problem, they're covered. They know what's going on instead of just like, Yahoo, I got this. And, my wife bought me this.
And there's a lot of that.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. So part of my goal is to just make smarter and safer pilots. But then I thought, damn, PE. Pretty much, there's almost every area in our campus and our divisions on campus and different programs can connect to drones.
Oh, you could touch them all.
Yeah, except English, right?
Math, English, but bio, any science you're going to touch.
Oh, yeah.
Geology.
Yeah, geology,
oh,
geography. I just emailed this morning with our geography program, we're doing some GIS with some geospatial mapping and stuff.
I saw someone flying a drone over a high school marching band. I think it was part of the band, so because they were doing some Ohio State cool thing.
Yeah. And
someone was trying to see the tuba guys aren't in the right spot.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And you're just thinking, that's where you're doing. It's so crazy where you're touching things now.
Yep. Yeah. And they just keep, like I said, the Shark Lab made me realize, again, these things that pop up. The Shark Lab and the PE program, when they came to me, it just reminded me there's more to this than just a camera. Right. It's more than just cool photography. And how to use that. And the biggest thing, the drone is just a tool.
Right.
Drone is just a tool. What do you do with the information that tool gives you, right? So you learn how to use that tool, but now you also need to learn how to use the data and the information from it. So photographers need to know how to edit photos. You need to know how to edit video. You need to compose photos and compose videos. Mapping software. You need to figure out how to map and how to do some photogrammatic kind of things and make 3D images and point clouds and those kind of things like that. So great thing is I get to learn all this stuff too.
Right.
So
how important is the license? I mean, let's face it, that's the scary thing for people.
Yeah.
The test.
Yeah.
How important is getting the license for regular Joe? Not someone in the career, but regular Joe.
Yeah. So here's the thing. So right now, the FAA classifies people as either hobbyists or commercial pilots.
Right.
Commercial pilots need the certification. If you're going to make money in any way, shape, or form, you need the license.
Okay. Period.
You just need
End of the story.
Yeah. If your friend is a real estate agent, and they say, hey, you have a drone, can you come and do some videos of the lot? and I'll pay $100. Technically, now you're commercial.
Okay.
You should have a license.
What if you've got a YouTube channel, you're a 14-year-old kid,
Yeah, no, I know.
and you're flying your drone, and you're getting monetized on YouTube, commercial pilot?
Not at 14 because you have to be 16 to get a license.
Okay, so
Right.
okay, so you could be a 14 flying around like a crazy bat out of hell like
Yeah.
they do.
Oh, yeah.
You're making money on YouTube because there's kids at 14
Yep.
making more money than you and I making them.
Yeah. There's that kid that tests the toys out.
Right.
Parents exploited him at like 6.
So 14's fine, but you're kind of in this gray area.
Yeah, and the social media YouTube channel is a gray area.
Yeah. Because there's real money there.
Well, the thing is, yeah, it depends on the level. But the FAA, so here's the thing, and I've talked to the FAA, and I've gone to symposiums and stuff with the FAA, and they basically admit this too, so they were caught off guard. And so they're basically trying. Yeah, they weren't ready for drones.
Who was?
Yeah, exactly. And the way that they flooded the market. So basically, they're trying to close the barn doors after the horses have already left, and now they're trying to corral them back. So they're doing the best they can, knowing that the stuff is out there, knowing the stuff is on Amazon, knowing the stuff is at Walmart in the toy section.
It's at gas stations. You can pick them up. They're not.
Granted, but those are the.
Right, but those are people flying.
I know, but you're going to buy that thing, and it's going to be gone in a day.
Right, and people are okay with that. That's the crazy part.
Yeah, I know. So if you're going to do it, get a better drone, but you get what you pay for. But really, you really do with drones.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there's commercial and hobbyists. As it stands now, the FAA has been trying to figure out how do we retroactively regulate these people that already have drones. Mm-hmm. And
good luck.
Yeah, exactly. So they've been racking their brains on doing that. They're coming out. In the meantime, they're coming out with so commercial, got to get your certification, got to get the test. The hobbyist, if you're just going to take cool travel photos with the family and stuff like that with a drone, technically you don't need a license.
Okay. I'm good for the weekend.
Yeah. But what they're going to do is they're going to have a knowledge test. And they're going to roll that out, and okay. I don't think there's any teeth to it.
Is that an online thing?
I think so, and I think it's like a SpongeBob driving test. Like you just keep taking it. It doesn't really matter. But they want you to just they don't want you to do stupid things. They want you to understand you can only fly to 400 feet. You can't fly at night. You can't fly over people. They want
don't fly by the airport.
Right, those kind of things.
That's the thing that was amazed me very early on is everybody was like, I'm going next to an airport. Oh, God.
That guy in Vegas that flew over the Airbus and like, oh, cool. Granted, it was a cool shot, but as soon as he posted on YouTube, then it's like, FBI, kind of a thing.
Hello.
So, because you can't do that,
and you shouldn't.
No, you shouldn't. Because the minute a manned aircraft, the minute a manned aircraft is legitimately, because there's a lot of I think we were hit by a drone. It's not really a drone. It's a bird, and you were just a bad pilot.
Right.
But the minute that a drone does something negatively to a manned aircraft and somebody gets injured, whether it's a Cessna or a 747, it's over. Right. Then the FAA is going to be like, that's it. We can't,
we can't trust you
anymore. Forced our hand now. Yeah. So we were cool with you guys before, but now you got to get rid of these idiots.
We've been, I guess I say we in the drone community, the drone community has been fortunate that there hasn't been a major, God forbid, disaster drone related. Nobody's taken out an airplane or anything. A helicopter allegedly was hit last year. They still don't know. But nobody's taken out. But there has been extremely stupid close calls.
Oh yeah. And
I've seen some of them. I was up flying with Anaheim PD.
Yeah.
And someone started flying a drone at us, thinking it was funny.
Yeah.
Dietrich's taking this, high bank, getting us out of there, and then they're calling on him.
Right. And the thing is too. So another thing that the FAA has found, and we in the drone industry have found, is that especially when you go take the test, when you study and take the test and you pass it, then you become like this champion / advocate for the industry. So then you got to go out there, and your job is to, hey, you know, I don't know if you're going to be a Karen and narc on people that like, hey, you can't do that. But the idea is like, hey, do you know, I'll do that too. Hey, do you got a license? You know, you're not supposed to fly that high, you know, kind of a thing. You're not supposed to do that. You know, so just make people aware and educate them.
Sure.
Because, and most people, you know, there are assholes out there, but most people are, you know, they don't know what they don't know.
Right.
And then you tell them.
They're not doing
They're not trying to be a jerk.
I just didn't realize I shouldn't be flying over the freeway.
Right. Oh, there's a law. There's laws against that. Yeah, you can't fly over cars. You know?
Right.
And they learn, then they won't do it again. So it's the way that they're trying to get us out there and to do that. So there is a big push now for drone education and through college. The FAA actually has this big project now that they're launching with community colleges and the drone programs that are already at community colleges to try to push forth that. And I speak at a lot of high schools and that kind of stuff, just because I want them to know.
Okay, so give me your top 5 no-nos.
Well, I'll give you the main ones that there's the
that
big.
I'm sure people don't know.
Yeah, no, the big 4 are you can't fly over 400 feet.
Okay. Now, can a drone do that? You have to hit a button, or will it stop? Because I know, like, my drone says.
Some do. Well, DJI. Here's the thing with DJI drones. So DJI drones, DJI has been doing everything it can to make the U.S. government happy.
Right, and it should, because they're the big player.
Right, and to say like, no, here, this is what we're doing. So the FAA has these regulations, and the DJI says, hey, we'll put in geofencing. So based on GPS navigation, we will limit where, you know, we can indicate where there's no fly zones, and we won't let them fly, or they'll have to check off a couple things, and they'll have to log in and
notify them.
Right, and we will limit the 400 level kind of a thing. Cool, but that's just DJI. Nobody else has geofencing. So those drones at the liquor store, at the gas stations and stuff like that, they don't have geo what?
Yeah.
So those drones go anywhere. But so by law, you can't go above 400 feet because manned aircraft cannot fly below 500 feet.
So there's a buffer.
Right. So they give that little cushion. Helicopters are a whole different deal.
Right.
Helicopters have their own rules, but you should pay attention to helicopters.
Yeah, they're not sneaking up on you.
Right, exactly.
A Cessna, depending on how the wind blows, like I've been at Cal State Fullerton, and that's the flight path, they could sneak up on you depending on the wind and where things blowing.
Right.
A helicopter, not so much.
And also helicopters are more maneuverable like drones. A Cessna, not so much.
Right. He's got a path.
Right. So he can't quite get away from the drone if the drone is going to do something stupid.
Right.
A helicopter could just either bank or move or just fly above the drone and hit him with the prop wash and just down the drone, slam the drone to the ground. So that's the other thing too, is that a helicopter will take out your drone if it needs to. But you have you can't fly over 400 feet. You can't fly at night, which 4th of July, I look out, you know, in the backyard, whatever, and I see the little lights going around, and it's like, man.
So what do they say, sunrise, sunset?
Yeah, there's civil twilight and civil sunset, which is just right at those edges.
Okay.
You cannot fly over people. The only people you can fly over are the people that are part of your crew.
Okay, so what do they count as people? A body of 1 or 10 or?
They're somewhat vague.
Right, because if you're at the beach and it's early morning and there's one person walking the dog, what's the square footage? And you're like,
And you can, so here's the thing. You can fly over people.
Okay.
You just can't park over people.
Okay.
Right. So you en route to some place, you can fly over. So if you're on the beach and you just fly over and you're just moving, that's fine. But if there's a crowd of people, like there's a protest or something like that, and you're like, oh, I'm going to, like there is the LA had that viral video in the Hollywood protest where the drones flying shows like 5,000 people in Hollywood Boulevard.
I knew that was immediately illegal.
I'm looking at it going, I hope that guy has a waiver. I doubt he has a waiver.
Oh, you know he did.
He did.
You know he did.
Yeah.
And everybody picked it up and played it.
Everybody shared it like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Look at the civil. And it's like, yeah, but that guy's illegal.
Right. It was funny.
He's breaking the law.
Like I saw every newscast showing that.
Yep.
And I thought, like, you're showing an illegal act. If that was something else and it wasn't really cool to see, you wouldn't have shown it. But that puts so many people.
Well, you're encouraging this to happen because somebody says, "Oh, that's cool. I want to do that too."
The next one,
next protest. Now you're going to have 8 drones out there, and then the minute one drops and hits somebody, you're screwed.
Yes.
So, no over 400, no at night, no flying over people, and then you have to keep it within your visual line of sight. You can't go beyond visual line of sight.
Over a hill and watch the monitor.
When I first started getting into this, I was at a conference. I wasn't talking at a conference, but I was at a conference. And I heard these guys talking, and they said, this guy was talking about how, and it was Southern California. It was like a Torrance to Redondo kind of a thing. He was like, I was flying around Redondo, but I was in Torrance. I was at my house in Torrance and stuff. And I was like, I'm hyperventilating, kind of thinking. I'm like, you can't see it. You can't see it. What are you doing? But, he was just relying on the camera. I can see the camera. Yeah, but you don't know when you're going to hit a power pole.
Right.
Or a wire.
Even Will and I were out in the desert flying. Even the drone at 400 feet high above you, it's small.
Oh, yeah.
It's a speck. It's a sparrow.
Yeah.
So if you put it out a quarter of a mile away now at 300 feet, good luck.
And you're just relying on the camera, which is one perspective. You're just only forward.
Right.
You're dumb.
Good luck.
So so you got to keep it in visual line of sight. Those are the main 4. But all those 4, the FAA will grant waivers for those 4. So you can get authorization to fly at night. You can get authorization to fly over people. You can get authorization to fly beyond visual line of sight. But above 400 feet is hard to get.
I bet.
But the trick with that, though, is you're 400 feet. But if say you're at the what is it, the Citibank or U.S. Bank Tower in Los Angeles, you can go 400 feet above that.
So if you're standing on top of the building, you're 400 feet high.
Your drone can go 400 feet above that.
Because I've seen lots of those photos posted on Instagram, and I'm thinking, okay,
that's totally fine.
Who's doing that? Because that's an illegal.
No, that's totally fine. You can go 400 feet above the ground or 400 feet above a structure, thing. Because again, aircraft have that 500 foot.
Right.
So
their 500 feet is above that highest point.
Their 500 feet is above that tower. Right. So that's why there's that cushion. So that's a thing. So you can go over. Cushion. Oh, I get nervous, but
because that means if it's falling, what's that building? Over 1,000 feet. That's 1,500 feet of that just heavy. I don't care that it's plastic.
Just picking up speed.
It will be a bowling ball when it hits something.
Exactly. So what happens is to get those waivers, you have to justify what you're doing. You have to stipulate what you're doing. You have to stipulate that you have the equipment. Like, for example, the flights over people, it's getting a little bit easier, but the flights over people, CNN was one of the first entities to have a authorization to fly over people. And what happened is they had to build their own drone. So they built this drone with a little camera, and they built it to where it'll break. If it lands, it just falls apart. So the kinetic energy, like if it hits you on the shoulder, it's going to be like, ow. It's not going to break your shoulder, but it's going to hit your shoulder and then just break apart.
Do you know who built it?
I don't know. They probably contracted somebody to do that. But stuff like that, or the big thing now, drones have to have parachutes. They have ballistic parachutes now.
Really?
There's a company here in Anaheim that actually...
Is that on size? Like you're flying the biggest...
on the drone itself.
Because some of them are massive, as you know.
Oh, yeah. And that's the thing. And also, the other thing, too, is the argument for and against parachutes. Like, if you have a parachute, then you're more likely to be approved to have that waiver.
Okay.
Doesn't mean you're going to guarantee it, but you're going along the right path. But I tell students all the time is that, most of the stuff that you do, you're going to be about 200 feet. You're not going to be at 400 feet or whatever, because you're going to see the curvature of the Earth, which is cool. You go up there one time. But if you're going to take photos and videos, you're going to be in the 200 foot, maybe 180 range kind of a thing. If you have a malfunction and that drone drops, is there going to be enough time for that chute to deploy to slow it down? The parachute manufacturers argue yes, and they've demonstrated yes.
Have you seen demos live?
I've seen, and they pop up. There's actually one company, and I talked to the guys about it too, but it's funny where the drone, like a Phantom, right? So the parachute is on top, right on top, so it doesn't mess up the center of gravity. So it's on top, and if you fly the Phantom, I think they fix this now, but you fly the Phantom in sport mode, which means you just can go as fast as you can all out. So when that happens, if you're flying it fast forward, what happens is the drone goes fast, so it noses down a little bit, so it's going to fly faster.
Sure.
What happens is the gyroscope in the parachute sees that it's leaning, so it registers it as falling, so it deploys the chute. So now you're just flying in sport mode, then the chute back pops up, and then, so I think they fixed that because they said that was an error, and I'm sure they're a big company, so they fixed it, I'm sure.
Because in sport mode, those things reach close to 30 miles an hour,
yeah,
right?
They can get going, yeah. So, and it tilts. Like I said, the gyroscope within there, because it's got to pick up the drone's falling, so, and I'm only at 180 feet or whatever, I got to put the chute out quick. But so the minute it tilts, drone, the chute pops out.
Right.
So they're working on a thing. I think what they did is they got a system in the chute that notifies sport mode, and so then it deactivates the tilt. Or increases the severity of the tilt. But yeah, so you can get authorizations from those, and the FAA actually is working to alleviate those. They want drone companies to. They want to work with drone companies.
Sure.
They know,
it's not going away. Yeah. So you got to work together.
And for example, Beyond Visual Line of Sight, BVLOS, is one that some larger companies are really working on because they don't want to have the rail company, BNSF is a big one in this area. They want to do railroad inspections. They want to send drones out, and you're in the middle of Iowa. And just all the way across Iowa. And you don't want to have a drone pilot follow a mile away every time he goes. You want to be able to go 50, 150, 200 miles out with a drone, right? You want to be able
What kind of batteries that drone?
I know. Well, they got bigger ones. So
200 miles.
But you can inspect the rail yards. You don't want to have to have a drone pilot.
Right. At that point, why is he flying the drone?
Right. And the FAA knows that. So the FAA is working on ways to open up the regulations to where it's okay, then you can have extended visual line of sight or beyond visual line of sight is what they're getting to. So they're allowing that. Same with police departments. They want to be able to fly a drone from the headquarters out to a location without actually having to be able to see it.
Something like that's parachute.
Well, yeah, but right now you can't. Technically, you can't do it. Right, but the FAA, like I said, is working with these entities to try to figure out. Okay, well, with these precautions, with these situations, then we'll let you do it. And if we let you do it, if anybody else follows suit with this, then they can justify it, then they can do it too. So they're starting to ease the regulations. It's not like this is it and this is the only way. The 400 one is kind of a deal breaker, but the other ones are pretty.
Yeah, that's a
pretty
big
flexible.
one. 400 feet. Now you're flirting with other aircraft. That's touchy.
Yeah.
It's one thing if your drone falls in the desert and you don't have a parachute and it shatters everywhere and you're out $1,000.
Right.
It's another one if you hit a 737.
Right. And that's
or come close or just change the flight path of anything.
Right. And aircraft too. So we do a lot of flying in Fullerton, right? And
we have an airport.
And there's Fullerton Airport. And I have a good, fairly decent relationship with the airport manager and the tower. The tower, because the tower is federal, right? The FAA runs the towers, so they're separate entities. So they're the ones that grant you the permission. So I always have to call the tower to get authorization to fly. Just let them know we're flying, no big deal.
And flying where? You're at the school?
Like at the school or whatever from Fullerton. But we're in the approach path, the final for some of the aircraft that comes in. It's not a busy airport, but what'll happen is
enough, right?
And I've talked to pilots that'll come in and they said when they see drones, they're immediately calling the tower, hey, there's drone activity, this is going on, because they don't know who is doing
right.
what. And
you don't have to be part of the class. You
right.
could be a kid up the hill.
Right. It could be just somebody, not at Fullerton College, but if they're flying in, somebody over at Troy High School or whatever, just like, hey,
right.
look, there's a plane. I'm going to go over the plane. So they don't know what's going on. And so, so they'll immediately call if they see that, because again, they're not maneuverable. They're on approach. They're coming in.
Right.
And they don't want some squirrely drone pilot to mess them up. So they tell the tower, hey, this is going on. So what the tower likes to do is say, they let the pilots know, hey, heads up, there's drone activity at Fullerton College at this location. Mm-hmm. So that way they know. So everything's transparent. They know when we're going to be there. They know, we're doing it. I'll tell them we're only going to be about 250 feet. So it's all good. So that way it gives the pilots a little bit more ease. But yeah, they said they don't like seeing drones. They get scared.
Let's talk about the gorilla in the room, DJI.
Yeah.
How did it become the leading force? Obviously, it's Chinese back, so you got this touchy subject of, some people won't use it, and some people are saying, how did they become the leader?
They were just first out of the gate, and then they consumer-wise, yeah, they just saw an opportunity,
it cheaper,
and faster, but better quality, yeah, and more simplistic. That you can hook it up to your phones or stuff that you already had, and then they were first, and then other ones started developing it, and then they also took some other people's ideas and incorporated it into theirs. And
in those early days, there was a lot of stealing.
Yeah, and what's interesting is the DJI gets a lot of the attention, and they own the largest market share for drones.
Do you know what the share is?
It varies. I think at one time it was in the 70s, 70% of it.
Jesus.
But I think now they're down in the 60s. I know.
Yeah,
They still own most of the market share, but they're dropping.
And I saw that at CES. You could tell. Other people are coming.
Right. And the other big, large manufacturers were also Chinese too. So Unique is another manufacturer that's fairly formidable, and I think they're guilty by association sometimes, because the government focuses their attention on DJI, but then they say all Chinese. So the Unique guys are like, oh, okay. And their U.S. headquarters used to be in Corona, but they moved to Rancho. So they're Southern California based.
Rancho Cucamonga.
Wow, cheaper.
Oh, okay, sure.
So they got a bigger facility out there, but Unique does a lot more industrial stuff. They don't have quadcopters, but they have hexacopters.
Okay. And
they work a lot with Intel. They have an Intel IntelliSense system in there it's actually a cool aircraft. And then there's also Autel, which just released the Evo 2 now, which is a big game changer.
Why?
And they also, because it's 8K.
Okay.
40-minute battery life.
That's big. See, 8K sounds great. Where am I going to show it?
Right.
Battery life.
Oh, yeah. You're up there for 40 minutes.
Right.
It's got a lot better sensors. It's a lot smoother platform. It has and it's shaped like a Mavic. It folds up like a Mavic.
Okay.
And it interchanges. You can interchange the cameras.
Because if I showed you 2K, 4K, 8K, I don't know if the average person notices that.
Well,
but if I tell you,
if you're watching on a 1080p, nobody notices.
Right. Exactly. Right. It's the thing with YouTube. But if I tell you it's got 18 minutes, 28 minutes, and 40.
Yeah.
I'm taking 40.
Right, exactly.
That means I carry 3 batteries, and I've got a long shoot instead of carrying 100.
Right. I have a lot more flexibility. I have a lot more time in the air. Yeah, and it's an interesting thing. Autel just actually won a court patent infringement case against DJI. So because Autel actually has the patent on the folding that the Mavics have. That DJI was first, first. But Autel was just refining their program.
Okay.
And so now Evo folds like what it is, but they filed the infringement, and the court said, Autel has the rights, so either DJI stops selling Mavics, or
they pay.
You just pay a boatload of money to Autel every time you sell Mavics, and that's kind of they just made up that agreement. So
Right.
Autel is sitting in a pretty good position because they didn't want to cancel it. They just wanted to, now they got money so they can develop more.
Right. I mean, and I think that's what's needed right now to see it move forward is more competition.
Yeah.
Don't let the big gorilla just keep shoveling this down your throat. Like when I was at CES, I saw some that were water. They were going into the water. They were diving out of the water. I mean, it might sound silly, but you're pushing the envelope, and I think that's what needs to be done.
Yeah. That's really what's kind of happening. Those are the three big ones. Parrot actually was a big player, but they've kind of eased back a little bit. Parrot's a French company.
Right.
And
of course it is, the name.
And they still have, they were really good for a while, but now they've kind of, I don't think they're funding a lot.
It's a tough game.
Yeah, there was a couple U.S. manufacturers. 3DR was involved. They came in early, but they just knew they couldn't catch anybody. And so what they do is they allow their stuff to be open source, and they're working on the programming development side. Another U.S. company came up called Skydio, which is actually a really cool drone, but they just don't have the manufacturing capability that the Chinese can. They're hand making these drones.
Oh God!
So American made, but they're just not. They're not able to keep up with the way the market's flooded. So that's still good. There's some other European ones. There's a Swiss or Belgian. There's a Dutch company that does some really cool stuff. Their props are downward facing, so they can go in inclement weather. There's a lot of stuff that's out there that it just is. There was a company, I was talking to these guys at it, and they're in Australia, and they're a cinema company, and they were tasked to do shooting for one of the Pirates of the Caribbean. I don't know which one, but they wanted to put a long lens on a camera, and at this time it's like a red camera or something like that. So you got a really expensive camera from a
we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars
from a drone, and you're gonna put more glass on it, and you're gonna fly around the ship, and you're gonna be able to position it off the ship to get that angle. There was no airframes that could carry that weight, so they built their own drone.
Right. We'll build a frame. We'll build the motors, bigger blades.
Right. Because because you don't want to lose that Disney contract. Right. So and if you prove that you can do it, more people will come to you, and now it becomes right. And that's what happened. Now they're a drone manufacturer. They made this drone, and now other film companies are like, oh, we want that. Right. They're still a film company, but now they also make this drone. And there's a copycat to that. Yeah. I'm sure there were a lot of shots they went, you know what, we could do this with a gimbal, and now they're like, we're going to do it with a drone. Oh, yeah. And that's the thing is and most of these people are just creating their own, they're 3D printing the parts, and they're putting it together, and then they're putting the motors in, they're building their own airframes and putting it out there. And there's no real drone manufacturer, but they're just making these drones. So there's a lot of people that are building drones just for, either one-off use or, perpetual uses or something. Right. But because of the weight of either the camera, the weight of the lens. Right. Those cine lenses can get real heavy. If it's a wide angle, a long lens, those things are not like your regular DSLR. Right. It's like a baby's leg. They're huge. Right. And you put that, and now you're going to put that in a drone on the front side, so then now the drone is going to tip over forward. Right. Yeah. You got to have a bigger drone. And and they even said this is not a position that they thought they didn't think they were going to be manufacturing drones. Right. But now they're, here's how you 3D print it, kind of a thing. And so there's still a lot of that development going on. There's a lot of smaller, like I said, DJI has the biggest consumer market, but on the enterprise commercial side, there's a lot more disparity. There's a lot more companies that are out there. Right, a lot of competition. Yeah, there's a lot more competition. But on the consumer side, at Best Buy, at Walmart, and that kind of stuff, the good ones are all DJI, or you get the crap $50 ones. Right. So where do you see drone photography in 5 years or 10? Because
10 years ago, you'd have said, what?
Yeah.
5 years ago, you said, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's here.
Yeah.
Where is it in 10 years?
Smaller drones, better cameras, flexible cameras. The biggest thing that a lot of people were worried about, they were trying to figure out how to put zoom capabilities on drones.
Right.
Because that adds more glass. But now the technology is advancing, and so you don't, full frame cameras, and you have the larger, cameras with greater ability. In a smaller size,
right?
And you put them on a smaller platform, and so
will materials change? What they're using, the kind of a plastic and not a plastic. Now it's something other material. That now it's lighter, so you can have more glass.
It could be carbon fiber, more carbon fiber, which is lighter and more durable. But that all depends on cost.
Right.
The price of the material and how they're going to cost that. So I don't know if they're going to make that cost effective for the public.
Now, this might be a silly question, but do solar panels come into play? If you put a solar panel anywhere on a drone, on its back or anything, does that help in any way? Or
not as much as you would think.
Has anybody thought of it?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think I'm the first one to think of it.
Yeah, no, get that patent real quick.
Hold on, quick.
Yeah,
Write that
sketch
down.
that out. No, I think, I haven't really seen, but along those lines, probably next level is hydrocell.
Okay.
And there's a couple Korean companies that are making hydrocell drones, and so which now have hour and a half. Kind of a thing.
That's the big thing. Keeping the flight of it longer.
Yeah. It gives you more flexibility,
Sure.
more ability to do things. But the problem is the hydrocells now, because you're putting the fuel, now it's bigger. So you have a bigger drone, which is great if you're doing film. But if you're doing a real estate property and you just want to fly around, now you're putting a massive drone flying over neighborhoods and stuff. They're not going to work out too well.
But I think that's okay with 30 minutes on a flight time.
Yeah.
But if I'm the guy in Iowa that's doing a railroad,
right.
30 minutes doesn't work for me because my flight time 15 minutes back and forth. might not make it.
Right.
But you give me 90 minutes, I can go 80 miles out.
Right. And like I said, those are, I don't see those ones going more into consumer markets. Those go to large companies and transportation companies, farms, stuff like that. So they're looking for a different market, and not the DJI, not competing with DJI at Walmart. But on the consumer side, I think you'll have smaller drones. You're already seeing smaller drones, but the camera quality will improve in the smaller drones.
Okay.
So it makes it easier. So now it'll be a pocket-sized drone. The collapsible or not collapsible, that you can just put up and still get like 4K video resolution.
Right, God forbid.
Yeah,
4K,
1-inch sensor.
4K.
But yeah, you'll have better cameras at a smaller size. I think that's for the consumer size. I think that's what's going to be. Battery life, I don't think. And now that they're inching it up to 40. I don't want to say it's never going to hit an hour.
Right.
But in a consumer.
That really depends on the battery, right?
It depends on the battery
Everybody
quality.
says battery technology is kind of peaked, and that's got to get better for everything to change.
Right. That's an energy situation. So that's not the drone manufacturer. That's just electricity, and the battery manufacturers, the lithium ion stuff. But I think that's making the camera smaller will happen. Making the battery life longer will happen, but the battery life's going to just be incrementally. So.
Okay. Your book, you just finished up your second edition. Second edition. Is that a textbook for students, or is it something maybe if you're buying a drone for your kid, you should maybe buy a book? Little Jimmy sits down, or little Kimmy, and reads the book, and it's their introduction to flying.
It's kind of both, because I made it. So
There's not crayons. You don't have to draw on it.
No,
Okay.
Yeah, draw a picture of a drone. But that's what we do in college. But no, when I was researching, there's not a lot of textbooks out there as far as for drone piloting.
Well, no, I mean you're a pioneer.
Yeah, I don't know.
You want to be Lewis or you want to be Clark?
Yeah, exactly. Which one lived longer? But I didn't really see anything out there that, there are these guys that pop up, you'll pop up on the website that'll be like, we guarantee if you take our class, we're going to,
pass you. Yeah.
Pay us $650. Really? $46 a unit? Come on. 2-unit class. You can take that for $90 and you can learn how to fly. So that's the thing, is that those guys are whipping together stuff and pamphlets, and I started looking. I thought, because the FAA is great in regards to the fact that all their information is public. They just here's all this information, here's all the charts, here's all this stuff, but all their information that they provide, they don't have a drone pilot thing. Well, actually, they have a test prep book, that I kind of use in my class too. But their main book is the Pilot's Handbook of Aeronautical Knowledge, called a PHAK, and it's this massive book, and it's made for any type of pilot. All pilots have to use it, right? So if you're flying a Cessna or a Learjet,
or something Bell Ranger, whatever.
Yeah, you have to look at that book. So when it comes to drones, we use the information out of there too, but we only use like maybe a 16th of that book. So I was thinking, well, this is dumb to have the students get this, and I don't. And there's a lot of, they put a lot of information in there, which is great. But like I said, my mindset and my marching orders were to make drones for workforce development, to make it to teach people how to use it in the workforce. So I thought, well, I just got to scale this down. Here's what you need to know to do this, right? There's some extra stuff, and you can have these resources, and here's where you go to the FAA to get this extra stuff if you want it. But this is basically, to be a smarter and safer pilot, this is what you need to know. And so if you're going to be, the way I kind of made the book, or hopefully made the book, is to make it so I could use it for the class,
right,
and teach my way,
right.
But also, for if anybody did pick it up, it would help them. It's not going to guarantee that they're going to do it, but if going back to that 14-year-old that's on YouTube, if he were to pick that up, then he's looking through it. It'll help him be a smarter and safer person, so he's not going to do stupid things.
That's what you want.
That's the idea, right?
Can you pick the book up Amazon?
I think.
Okay.
So,
because I saw the first editions there.
Yeah. Then the second edition. The second edition is almost out. They're just finishing up. It's been a long time, but they're working on composition right now.
Okay.
We had to get some permissions because they added some more stuff to it.
Sure.
And we had to get some more legal permissions. And once they checked all that off, the idea is the second edition will be out, I think, by August.
Okay.
So, and the second edition, go with the second edition more than the first edition. First edition, I didn't know what I was doing.
What information about the drone program can you tell us? Like where to sign up? Do you have to obviously you have to register at Fullerton College to be a student?
Yeah. The great thing about community college is that it's not a university, and that if you have a heartbeat, you can register for a class.
Right.
We can even take 14-year-olds. I had a mom email me. I kid you not. I had a mom email me this summer because we have a summer drone class.
Okay.
And she's got a 10 and a 13-year-old. And she went, and I get it, being a parent.
That's a great mom, though. That's smart.
Yeah. And she just wants to get them. They like drones, and she wants to get them knowledgeable about what's going on, and get them involved, and get them busy over the summer. And I get that. So, but she was like, "Do you think it's going to be too much?" And I said, "The summer class will be too much because we're going to get in because." I add more to that class. It's the applied class. So we do Photoshop, Premiere Pro, and Pix4D mapping. So it's a lot for a 10-year-old to grasp. It's not just piloting. But I said, in the fall, we'll have a Saturday class. It's 8 weeks. That'll be just straight piloting. And they'll leave that a lot smarter and safer to prep them for the test if they want to take it when they turn 16. But if not, they're going to fall in line with legal stuff, and they're not going to get in trouble. So she's like, okay, I'll sign up for that. So, okay, cool. So yeah, that, and I get retirees that are looking just for a side gig or something to do. So it's a mix, but that's what's great about it, is that you can come in and you apply to the college, but you're gonna get in. You just have to get in the system. You apply for the college, and then they give you a registration number, and then you register for the class, and then you pay the fees. And our basic piloting class is 2 units. And like I said, it's like $46 a unit or something like that.
Okay.
So you're looking at like $92 with fees. It's probably going to be like $105 for like an 8-week class, 8 Saturdays.
That's great.
And then you'll leave and you'll be more knowledgeable about what's going on.
A safer pilot.
Smarter and safer pilot.
That's all you want.
That's really, like I said, I don't care what you use it for. Just don't do something stupid.
Right, because the community's small. You don't want to screw it up.
Right. Don't hurt anybody. Don't be dumb. Don't do anything illegal. That kind of stuff.
Jay, I can't thank you enough for being the first guest on the podcast.
The first one.
Yes, the first one. We talked about all kinds of great things.
Yeah. Well, thanks.
No crying, but that was okay. Maybe next time.
Next time.
We'll definitely have you back. We'll talk more.
Oh, well, thank you. Anytime.
Jay, you're the best.
All right. Thanks, man.
All right.
Bye.
Hope you enjoyed that podcast. Please hit the like button where you found us. You can follow us on Instagram and Twitter. We also have a website, justagoodconversation.com, where you can leave questions and comments.